ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the British Museum for a one-day, highly dedicated and highly elevating form of study. We've had quite a lot of one-day study things in the British Museum. This one, I reckon, will be a record breaker in many different ways. So, I should start off by saying that if the alarm goes off, it probably is just the electricity playing around, but peacefully follow whoever it will be who will lead you up the steps and out the back and into the safety of the outer world, so don't panic about it. It's not very likely to happen. The second thing is that there is a lavatory to the left and one at the top of the stairs around the main drum. There are two more, so if necessary you can find your way there. And could I ask everybody to turn off their mobiles if you've got them with you, so that they don't go off in the middle. Well, the first thing to say, this is a map which shows where Elam is in the Middle East. And it's a curious thing that Elam, which was a major and very significant cultural element in the history of the ancient Near Eastern world, is hardly covered in the British Museum. Our collections have very little to do with Elam, and there's not much of a tradition for studying this in Britain. There hasn't been up till recently. It's not been one of the main focuses of ancient Near Eastern research here. And of course the big collections are a consequence of archaeology, and most of the material in Europe is in, outside of Iran, I should say, is in the Louvre, and is in a way a separate thing. So we can't do very well by putting out special displays of Elamite stuff to stimulate you during your lunch hour. So what we have today is a rather unusual thing, which I think can be best summed up as follows. We have a couple of national treasures who will be talking about national treasures themselves. So you're very privileged to be exposed to new research, important research, and startling research in both the areas of writing and music. So a core point about the presentation by Francois Dessets begins today is to do with decipherment. And that is something which everybody is interested in, and it's certainly been something that our department's been interested in from the beginning. And when you think about decipherment, there are kind of two things. You have the situation where you have one text in two different writing systems. And when you know one of them, you can use that to lever open the other and produce eventually a decipherment, as in, for example, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and with Persian cuneiform and Babylonian cuneiform. The one is a God-given lever to take the lid off something which is otherwise almost impenetrable. And the other procedure is when you have some ancient writing on an ancient document, and you proceed along the lines that, for example, with linear B rather, and this is from the Greek world, it's where the Greeks lived, it's all Greek looking, why don't we try Greek? And when they did try Greek, it turned out to be correct. So that was a kind of natural inference from a logical starting point which was justified. But of course that doesn't work normally because, say with the Indus Valley writing system, lots of people have tried the same thing and suggested, it ought to be Dravidian or some other Indian language, and no one has ever managed to make any progress on those grounds with the Indus Valley writing system, which probably will have to wait for some kind of bilingual. So if you decide to become a decipherer, want to get into the record books, you have to have intelligence, flair, and a certain kind of extra mental twist to your intellectual faculties to enable you to see where people haven't seen the answer and to fight and never give up because you want the truth. And there are not many persons who have that qualification in who's who under their name. Real decipherers are rather few and far between. I should say also that in the correspondence files of my department we have letters from a very wide range of decipherers, all of which are insane. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Francois, who is both text person and archaeologist. He got a PhD from the highest school in Paris. He taught in Tehran. He's fluent in many languages. He knows which way is up. And he's made the most extraordinary progress in a field where most people have run away, cowardly and intimidated. And we are very fortunate that he is today going to tell us the fruits of his research, what he's discovered, and we're very privileged. Thank you.
So, hello, good morning. Thanks a lot, Irving, for this very nice introduction. I would like also to thank Richard for his help since we met recently, but thank you, Richard, and Brian Abouyan also. So thank you all, and thank you for coming to this quite specialized talk about Iranian writing. So any guess about the meaning of what is written on the screen? Did you read the decipherment paper published in 2022? So you were right to come. You will have an introduction to the decipherment. So I wanted to welcome you in the British Museum. Here is written, as you can see, welcome to the British Museum. So as you can see, we can write many different languages with linear Elamite writing, which is quite a fascinating one. So just few information about how we are going to run the day. I'm going to speak for 3 hours this morning. So don't be afraid, there will be a break, 15 minutes break around 11. Then I will resume and I will talk until 1 p.m. I will speak mainly about, this morning, the Iranian writing tradition from the linear Elamite system and its decipherment, back to the origin of writing in the world, the Proto-Elamite system. So let's see how much of Proto-Elamite I can tell you this morning. We'll have a lunch break between 1 and 2 p.m. Then this afternoon I will we'll talk once again with a presentation of a very bright civilization, a Bronze Age civilization in Iran, Jirov civilization. Why am I going to talk about Jirov? Because I excavated there for many years. So I think that's a nice, I will try to give you a complete report about what we did in Jirov. And then around 3:30 p.m. I think Richard and Céline will do, I think, a very nice and musically illustrated conference about music in Elam. So, and my name, of course, is Francois Dessets. So, if you consider the story of Iran, you may consider it according to 2 big urbanization cycles. The first one started in the 10th millennium BC with Neolithization. It means the creation of agriculture and stock breeding. And you can see the climax of this first urbanization cycle, which is the 3rd millennium BC. And then the second one, from the 2nd millennium BC until now. And if we focus just on the first big urbanization cycle, its climax is the late 4th, early 2nd millennium BC, so something like 4,500 years ago, with, it may be considered as a lost golden age, with long-distance trade, big cities, writing systems, art, first states. Of course, in Mesopotamia at that time, that's the time of the early dynasties and the empire of Akkad and the Euphrates dynasty. So, of course, Iran is not isolated in the history of the ancient Near East. And we are going to focus mainly on the climax of this first urbanization cycle. So this slide is quite complicated, so sorry for, but I think it helps to understand a lot of things about the situation in Iran, which is quite complicated. So here I'm showing you all the different languages on this side and all the different writing systems on the right, which are attested on the territory which is currently called Iran, from the 4th millennium BC until now. So as you can see, it seems to be quite complicated. And for us, for example, in Europe, if you just think about the case in Europe, or actually in France, when I'm asking this question, in France, which kind of writing system we use in France? Greek alphabet and Latin alphabet. I think in the UK, you have the Latin alphabet, maybe you may have some runic stuff which are more recent, but just two writing systems. Look at Iran. You have something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different writing systems which were used. And look also at the different languages, with of course the Persian one and what I call Elamite, or sometimes I prefer calling it Attantite. And we're going to talk mainly about this language and these two writing systems there. Let's make a brief introduction about writings, the different writings system used in Iran, and just to resume a bit the history of Iran, let's go and take a look at Old Persian language written with cuneiform in Old Persian in Achaemenid time. It means in the from the 6th century BC to the 4th BC. Of course, you know the map of the Persian Empire. Here it is, and a view of Persepolis in Fars, in current Iran, with the very nice bas-relief. And at that time, they were recording Old Persian with a very specific writing system, which is a cuneiform-like, but which is not the real one. Here it is. Few centuries later, we are in the, let's say, Parthian and Sassanid times, so it means from the 2nd century BC to the 7th century AD. They were using the Aramaic alphabet, it is, to record Middle Persian and Parthian languages. Here is a view of the Sassanid Empire around 600 AD. With very nice urbanization, of course, in the south of the country, and very propaganda art with King Shapur. We are in the 3rd century AD, and look here, just behind the horse of the king. Of course, we have very nice silverware, and actually at that time, Middle Persian language, which is the evolution of Old Persian language, was recorded with a derived Aramaic alphabet. Here it is. And of course, you know that nowadays in Iran, they are using a specific Arabic alphabet since, well, let's say 7th, 8th century AD, after the Arabo-Islamic invasion of the country, to record Persian. And just for you to give some examples, we are in the Safavid period, so we are in between the 16th and the 18th century AD, and we are going right in the center of this empire, in Isfahan, with a very nice mosque. And of course, they were using the Arabic alphabet at that time to record Arabic, of course, like here you have the three names, Allah, Muhammad, and Ali, but also to record Persian language. And they were using a very specific type of calligraphic style, which is called Khat and Astahlir. Okay, and if we consider the current distribution of writing systems, so I'm talking about writing systems, I'm not talking yet about languages. If you pay attention to the current distribution of writing systems currently in the world, you can see that Iran is part of the Arabic alphabet community. Okay? And of course, there is a very recent phenomenon also in Iran. They are starting using more and more the Latin alphabet to record Persian, and they call that Finglish, actually. Because for them, as soon as a French, I was a bit disappointed about that, as soon as you are writing with the Latin alphabet, by default it's English. And it was quite hard to make them understand with Latin alphabet you can record other languages than just English. Anyway. So, here is one, I've been talking about that for now 2-3 years, and I know that there is a very, very frequent confusion, very big mistake between language and writing. So language. Language is immaterial phenomenon produced by vocal cords. And yeah, it's more or less it's something you're going to listen with your ears, okay? And here is the current distribution of big linguistic families in the world, and we are going to focus mainly on the green ones, which are the Indo-European languages. And here is the distribution of the Indo-European languages right now in the cradle of Indo-European languages with Romance languages, Germanic ones, Slavic, Greek, and Indo-Iranians. And here I would like to, you are going to understand why I want to talk about that, why I want to talk about the Basque. Basque is not an maybe you know that, is not an Indo-European language. It's probably what remains of what was spoken in Europe before the invasion of the Indo-Europeans in the 3rd millennium BC. And so here you can see the evolution of the distribution of Basque language from the 1st century BC, from the report of Caesar during the War of Gauls to 20th century. As you can see, the area where Basque was spoken is getting smaller and smaller, and maybe if we at the beginning of 20th century, we may have expected the complete loss of Basque language, which is not the case. And why am I talking about Basque language? Because in a way, it's quite easy this way to understand what is Elamite. Because Elamite language, or attempted language, could be considered in a way as a kind of Near Eastern Basque. My point is, these languages are both isolate languages, and they, in the case of Basque, it almost completely disappeared because of the Indo-European impact, and in the case of Elamite, actually, it completely disappeared 1,000 years ago. So, now we talk about writing systems, and what is the difference between these three spellings, graphies. I think that some Iranians in the room, you may read the second sentence, the second phrase. So, any guess?
Who are you?
Yes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, I wrote 3 times with 3 different writing systems the same phonetic information. I, O, R, U. I, O, R, U. So as you can see in this case, the English phonetic information was recorded with 3 different writing systems. But you have the contrary, the same writing system which may be used to record different languages. Like here in the case of the Latin alphabet, used to record English, French, and Persian. And this is a case of, for example, of Finglish here. So as you can see, languages and writing systems, they are different phenomena. They are not, in our case, it's quite hard to think about that because French, English, whatever, all languages were recorded since the beginning only with Latin alphabet. And for us, we have the impression that there is a very strong link between language and writing system, which is not the case. Think about Persian, Old Persian recorded with cuneiform, Middle Persian recorded with Aramaic alphabet, current Persian recorded with the Arabic alphabet. Okay, so why the ancient Near East is extremely important? I think, and I'm not the only one, most of us think that the importance of the Near East comes back to the Neolithization, which is the invention of agriculture and stock breeding, which happened in the Near East for the first time in the world in the 10th millennium BC, more or less 12,000 years ago, after the last Ice Age. And from here, Neolithization spread actually to Europe. So from this point of view, what happened in the ancient Near East is very important for European history. Here is the map showing you the speed of the Neolithization wave from 10th millennium BC in the ancient Near East, and as you can see in UK, the Neolithization wave reached UK only in the late 5th millennium BC. Okay? So, but the movement is very, very clear from the east to the west. And that's just an example, but if you look at history in a very broad scale, the ancient Near East was all the time in advance from the 10th millennium BC to the 1st millennium BC, from a technological point of view. All the big innovations in the world appeared in the ancient Near East. So agriculture, stock breeding, the life in villages, metallurgy, writing system, first big states. So all what we are currently calling civilization actually was born in the ancient Near East. And of course, among these different elements, we have writing, which is a very, very important phenomenon. So whenever we are talking about writing, we can see this kind of map here, and we understand very quickly that it seems that in Mesopotamia with cuneiform and in Egypt with hieroglyphs, it seems that writing was created there first, in the late 4th millennium BC. So around 3300 BC, and as you can see, China, writing appeared much later, more or less 2000 years later. And in America, the American continent, the first writing systems, they were developed only in the 1st millennium BC. So as you can see, ancient Near East, Mesopotamia, and Egypt are much are older, really much older. Another map, more or less, it's the same. And usually these are the kind of maps you may find, and they are wrong. I disagree with them because there is a very big lacuna in these maps. They never mention Iran. They just talk about Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is Iraq, and Iran is completely. I really don't understand why Iran, what the territory which is currently called as Iran, is never mentioned in maps talking about the invention of writing, which honestly I cannot understand. So I'm going to talk about that at the end of the presentation this morning, about the role played by the Iranian civilization, what we call Proto-Elamite civilization, in the invention of writing in the world, in the late 4th millennium BC. And if you go and take a look at Wikipedia, which is of course a very important internet site where actually I'm using a lot, Wikipedia of course, here is the current paradigm about the invention of writing. And as you can see, Mesopotamia is above is on top of the creation, spreading its wisdom to Egypt and Iran, Elam. Of course, if there was an Egyptologist in the room, maybe he would disagree with this dotted line here. And actually, as there is an Iranologist in the room, I can tell you that I strongly criticize this relation here. And actually, I hope I will have enough time today. I am not considering Proto-Elamite anymore as the daughter of Proto-Cuneiform, but they are sisters. They are contemporary. Okay? So, here, I disagree with that. And look here, Proto-Elamite and Linear Elamite. The ancient ID wants to consider them as two different writing systems. Proto-Elamite at the end of the 4th millennium BC, and Linear Elamite at the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, will be two distinct writing systems. And actually, I've been proposing for the last 2-3 years the idea that actually there is a continuity between Proto-Elamite and Linear Elamite. And actually, that's an ancient idea. At the beginning of the excavations, French excavation in Susa, they were thinking that actually that was the same writing system. And I'm just coming back to this ancient idea. I hope I will have time to tell you why at the end of the presentation this morning. Anyway, now we are going to focus on Linear Elamite. And just a few slides about how decipherments works, usually how they work. And we are going, so of course we're going to talk about Linear Elamite. And I'm going to show you two very big and famous decipherments, and the most important decipherments, actually, they happened in the 19th century AD. The first one, so actually, I added this morning Thomas Young just because I'm in the British Museum, so I should be careful about that. So anyway, Egyptian hieroglyphs deciphered mainly by Jean-François Champollion, and cuneiform, and I'm going to, in a way, to present it quite simply, deciphered or started to be deciphered by Grotfen and Rollison and others. And each decipherment proceeds in the same way, from the known to the unknown. So Irving was referring to decipherers. They need to be very smart, of course, very clever, very. You need to keep on for many years. That's very important. And of course, that's not an illumination. You are not going to wake up one morning. Okay, I know the value of this sign. And no, it's a very logical, pure logical thinking where you are moving from known to unknown. And once the unknown is getting known, you can start from this point to go to other points. So that's very important. And you must ask this yourself this three question in each decipherment. Was the language recorded with the writing system you want to decipher? Is the language recorded with this writing system, was it known before? First question, very important one. Do we know proper names, like names of kings, gods, and places, recorded with the writing system you want to decipher? Do we know these proper names before? And are there any bilingual texts? Okay, Jean-François Champollion. We celebrated 2 years ago in France the 200th anniversary of decipherment. I don't know if you talk about that in UK, but in France it was quite a big party about Champollion 2 years ago. And theoretically, the decipherment of hieroglyph, the official starting point is 1822 with this lettre à Monsieur Dessets. And if you read the complete title of this document, it's Letter to Mr. Dessets, considering the alphabet of the phonetic hieroglyphs used by Egyptians in order to record titles, names of Greek and Roman rulers. So first of all, Champollion started to read the names of the Greek and Roman rulers of Egypt, like Ptolemy, like Cleopatra, like Auguste. Okay? According to you, what was the turning point? What was the main tool used by Champollion in his decipherment? What would be the first things would come to your mind? Huh? No, before the decipherment, he didn't know the alphabet.
Ptolemy. The name Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, yes, but you have a very important item in the British Museum.
The Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, the Rosetta Stone. Yeah. So Rosetta Stone played a quite important role, of course. It's an edict of Ptolemy V in the beginning of 2nd century BC, and actually it's recording 3 texts, 2 in Egyptian, this one, and the last one in Greek. So that's a bilingual text, okay, with 2 different languages, Egyptian and Greek, but it is a trigraphic text with hieroglyphs, demotic writing, and Greek alphabet. So as you can see, Egyptian language was recorded with 2 different writing systems here on this document. Of course, it played a quite important role, but that was not the turning point in the decipherment. He had the chance that the ancient Egyptian language was still spoken at his time, and in a way it is still spoken nowadays in a more modernized version, of course, and this is Coptic language. Coptic language was the key of the decipherment, because the relation between Coptic language and ancient Egyptian language, it's the same relation that, for example, between Italian and Latin. That these are almost the same languages. Just an example, how do you say sun in Coptic? You say it Ra, like the Egyptian king of the sun. Okay, so that was the key point. And he was not the first one to make this hypothesis that ancient Egyptian language may have been related to Coptic language, but he was the one who pushed this hypothesis to the end. And actually, before deciphering hieroglyphs, he was a very good scholar of Coptic language. He wrote a grammary when he was studying in Paris in 1815 or 1814, something like that. And of course, also he had the chance to know the names of rulers like Ptolemy and Cleopatra and so on and so on. And actually, these are the first. And actually, the Egyptians, they were very kind enough to clearly show us where the names of the pharaoh are written in the cartouche. Okay? So, and of course, that was very important. So, if you summarize everything, the decipherment was quite easy. He had a lot of data in order to... So, in this case, compared to linear Lamite, that was easier than in my case, but in this case, the Egyptian hieroglyph system is much more complicated than the linear Lamite writing system, which you are going to see is much more simple than the hieroglyphs. So, yeah, we talked about that. Okay, let's move to the ancient nearest. So, and also, you have to think about that in order to lead a decipherment, you need proper copies of the inscriptions. It may sound obvious, but as long as you don't have access to precise copies of the inscriptions, any decipherment is impossible. Look, until the end of the 18th century, these are, here is a drawing of the copy of the Achaemenid inscription in Iran. And as you can see, not very precise. And we had to wait for Carsten Niebuhr in order, he traveled in the ancient Near East and he produced very nice and very precise copies. And actually, that is the beginning of decipherment because he gave to scholars in Europe very precise documents to work with. Before these drawings, no decipherment was possible because all the scholars, they were working on unprecise copies of the text. So that's very important, the work of Carsten Niebuhr. In the late 18th century, actually, a professor of Champollion in Collège de France is not as famous as his student. His name is Antoine Sylvestre de Sacy. I don't know if you know him, but he played a quite important role. He was actually the big scientific star at that time in the late 18th century AD, because he could decipher the Aramaic alphabet used on Sassanid monuments, and he could decipher it in order to read the Middle Persian inscriptions written by the Sassanid kings. So here is Antoine Sylvestre de Sacy. Actually, he was not very nice with Champollion, but that's another story. And he could decipher the inscription of the Sassanid kings, and here is an example of one of his translations, for example, in the case of inscription of King Ardeshir. And actually, in these inscriptions of the Sassanid kings, of course, we are going to read. So, Sassanid kings is between the 3rd and the 7th century AD. And, of course, we are going to find some titles. And, for example, pay attention to this very, very important title used by the Sassanid kings. King of Kings. Shah Shah. King of Kings. Okay. So, in the ancient Near East, all Rosetta Stone, to decipher cuneiform, these are the trilingual Achaemenid inscriptions found in Iran. So, once again, I remind you, Achaemenid period is between 550 and 330, from Cyrus the Great to Alexander. Okay? So it's quite recent in this history of antiquity. And Achaemenid kings were kind enough to give us inscriptions recorded in 3 different languages. Their own language, Old Persian, but also Old Persian, Elamite, Akkadian. Old Persian, Elamite, Akkadian. No, I can tell you, these are Old Persian, Akkadian, Elamite, Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian. So all Rosetta Stone, in a way, in the ancient Near East, are the trilingual inscriptions of Achaemenid kings. So two people played a very important role in the decipherment of cuneiform, and you are going to understand why I am talking about the decipherment of cuneiform. Because you are going to ask me, Francois, how do you know what you know? And I know what I know because there are scholars working on cuneiform since the 19th century. So I built my decipherment on previously done work. I want to explain you completely from the beginning what all the building has been built, actually. So we are going to talk briefly about Grotefeld for decipherment of Old Persian language recorded with cuneiform, and then the completion of the Old Persian decipherment by Rawlinson and the decipherment of Akkadian language recorded with cuneiform writing. So Grotefeld is a German, but actually Germany was not a country at that time anyway, but he was living in Germany, and he had access to two very big important works led in 18th century. So first of all, the work of Antoine Isaac Silvestre de Sacy about the Middle Persian inscriptions of the Sassanid kings, and he also had access to the work of Hyacinthe Anquetil du Perron, who was a French scholar who went to India. He came back to France with some manuscripts of the sacred Zoroastrian books called Avesta. He published them, and we had access to the Avestic language. So before Grotefeld, we knew Avestic language and we knew Middle Persian language used by the Sassanid kings. And he's going to make, of course, he's going to make a lot of hypotheses, and one of them is going to suppose, to make the hypothesis that maybe the title used by Achaemenid kings, so be careful about time, Sassanid times, 3rd century AD to 7th century AD, Achaemenid time, 6th century BC to 4th century BC. There are something like 5 centuries between Achaemenid and Sassanid times. And he made the hypothesis that maybe Achaemenid kings were using the same titles than the Sassanid ones. King of Kings. And in the title King of Kings, of course, you can see very clearly that there is one word which is repeated twice. King. And with this assumption, look, almost from the beginning of the inscription, you may, for example, of course, Old Persian is very practical because they were separating each word with this slash. So thank you, Persians, that makes our work much easier. But here you can see that we have the same word. We have the same word recorded twice, but here there are some specific signs which were added at the end of the first word. And he made the hypothesis that here is maybe recorded King of Kings, of course in Old Persian language. And he was right. And that is the beginning of the decipherment of Old Persian language recorded with cuneiform. And this is the way we are reading it now, Sherfianam, nominative singular, genitive plural, King of Kings. Okay? And he could actually get access to the phonetic values of these signs. That is the beginning of the decipherment. And then he realized that, of course, before this title is probably the name of a king. And among all the names of kings he could read before, one of them was actually starting with these two signs. So, if you remember the name of the Achaemenid kings, Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes, among these kings, which one, his name could start with Ch? Chashayar. So Chashayar in Greek is Xerxes. And he was right. Kshathia, king, of Kshathia, king, the current word for Persian is Shah. Shah is a current Persian, and Kshathia in Old Persian. And look at Ksha, the name of Xerxes. And he could read the name of Xerxes, Kshathia, Shah, written in Old Persian cuneiform. So that is the beginning of the decipherment of Old Persian written in cuneiform. And please pay attention, the titles and the names of the kings. These are very important ways in order to enter a rating system. So he did not lead the decipherment, he did not finish the decipherment of Old Persian, but of course he started it in a very good way. And so, okay, he had Avestan, knowledge about Avestan language, Sanskrit, and Middle Persian. He knew the names of the Achaemenid kings through the Greek sources, and of course in the Bible, some people like Cyrus, they also mentioned, so he knew the name of the Persian kings, so thanks to these two bases, he could start the decipherment of Old Persian recorded with cuneiform. So, first text, done. So, second stage, few decades later, with this British officer, Rawlinson, he was sent to Iran, at that time that was the Qajar Empire, and I guess he had some free time. And he went notably to work on this inscription. Pretty sure that the Iranians in the room, you know it. It is Bizotun, nearby Kermanshah, nowadays. And with this inscription of Darius the Great, which is 50 meters high, so it's quite hard to distinguish the cuneiform signs. And actually, I don't know if he was the first one, but actually he was the first Western one to climb on the cliff. As you can see, it was very dangerous. And he made a precise copy of the Bizotun inscription. And thanks to this very precise copy of the Bizotun inscription, he could complete the decipherment of Old Persian. And of course, once you have access to the Old Persian version, you may wonder about the two other texts recorded in different languages, which are probably translations of the Old Persian text. And actually, Darius the Great, so because it's Darius the Great, was very kind enough because he told us at the beginning of the inscription, I am Darius, the great king, the king of kings, the son of Istas, blah, 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 blah. And I took Armenia, Arachosia, Drangia, Margiana. So he's giving us something like 30 different toponyms. And of course, these toponyms are going to be mentioned in such a way in the Old Persian text, and almost in the same phonetic way in other texts. And thanks to these toponyms, you may propose some hypotheses about the phonetic values of the cuneiform signs used in the Akkadian and Elamite text. And actually, so next stage is the decipherment of cuneiform recording Akkadian. And you're going to understand the importance of Akkadian. And there was a very famous experience led in 1857 by the Royal Asiatic Society in London. They gave to 4 scholars this text, and they had, as an exam, they were supposed to submit their translation of the text, and after a few months, they sent to the Royal Asiatic Society 4 translations, and they were almost, that was the same translation. So, Akkadian language, recorded with cuneiform, was declared as deciphered in 1857. And look, why it was very easy to decipher Akkadian language recorded with cuneiform, because Akkadian language is a Semitic language, like Arab or Hebrew. And we know, of course, Arab or Hebrew. Look, here are the words in Akkadian, okay? For example, for father, Ab, and as you know, in Arabic, that's the same word. In Hebrew, almost the same word. For example, house, bitum, and of course, bait in Arabic, and in Hebrew, bait. So, between Arab, Hebrew, and Akkadian, it's almost the same relation as between French, Italian, and Spanish. These are almost the same languages. And of course, as soon as we understood that Akkadian was a Semitic language, that was very easy to understand it. And nowadays, in the current cursus of students working on cuneiform and Near Eastern languages, you will start first with Akkadian language recorded with cuneiform writing. That's the basics. Okay. So, Old Persian, we reach Akkadian, and of course we add Hebrew and Arabic. So second inscriptions deciphered and understood. And then we may wonder about what is this second inscription here between Old Persian one and the Akkadian one. This inscription seems to be recorded with a very weird language which we didn't know before. We call it now Elamite or Attantite. And we're going to talk about that. So, let's talk about Elamite. And I want you to understand, I will give you some examples after that, that the basis of our knowledge of Elamite language are the translation in Achaemenid inscription of this language in Akkadian and Old Persian. That's the basis of our knowledge of Elamite. So, and you're going to understand the situation is much more complicated with Elamite language. As I told you, that's an isolate language like Basque. So we cannot make any comparisons with any other languages currently known. Here is an example of Elamite text. So of course, if you cannot read cuneiform, you cannot know if it's written in Sumerian, in Akkadian, in Orit, in Hittite, in Elamite, or whatever. I just want also to emphasize that the situation in ancient Near East is much more complicated than in Egypt, because in Egypt mainly they are only dealing with one language, of course, which evolved during the time, recorded with many different writing systems. But consider the situation in the ancient Near East. We have at least 10 different languages, completely different. So that makes the situation much richer and much more complex. So that's the Kunanki vessel of King, the Simashkan king King Tatu, around 2000 BC. And if I want to reconstruct precisely the language behind it, here it is. Don't ask me now the translation, because my point, you are going to understand, I can read the text, but the translation sometimes is quite difficult. You are going to understand why. So, of course, the Germans, they are the best in philology. So we have two important tools for the Elamite language. We have this book about the Elamite inscriptions in cuneiform of the royal inscription in Elamite language recorded with cuneiform, published in 1965. It's still very good. Translation, no, but the edition of the text is very good. And there is this dictionary published in 1987 about Elamite language, and these are two big important tools about the Elamite language. So here I'm explaining you how do we know the Elamite language. Because you are going to understand that the decipherment of linear Elamite writing was based on the previous knowledge of Elamite language. The knowledge of Elamite language is based on Akkadian and Old Persian, and the knowledge of Akkadian and Old Persian is based on the decipherment of cuneiform. So, Elamite language is spoken at least from the 3rd millennium BC, but it was very probably spoken before, but we don't have any text, so we cannot say so. And it was written up to the time of Alexander, because at the time of Alexander that was the last Achaemenid inscription. But we know for sure that the Elamite language was spoken after the arrival of Alexander. It probably disappeared something like 1,000 years ago. So just because I can see that there are some Iranians in the room, you invaded in the 2nd millennium BC the territory of the Elamite. But of course you probably mixed Iranian speakers and Elamite speakers. Like Europeans, we invaded the territory in Europe of Proto-Basque speakers, okay? And the last speaker of Elamite language, the recent version of Elamite language, probably died 1,000 years ago, so that was not such a long time. And we have some travelers, like Ali Starkri. They wrote this kind of record about the people of Khuzestan. As for their language, the common people speak Persian and Arabic, although they have another, Khuzi, which is not Hebrew, Aramaic, or Persian. And sometimes it is called the language of devil, because it's very complicated to understand. we think that, okay, it's not Persian, it's not Aramaic, it's not Hebrew, it's not Syriac or whatever, it's very complicated. It is called Khuzi, so that must be a recent version of Elamite language. And actually, just for your information, the current name of the province of Khuzistan comes from Khuzi, the Khuzi. So, by Khuzi, they are probably meaning what we call nowadays Elamite or Attantite. And after 1000 AD, no mention anymore about the Khuzi people, so they died. No, they didn't die. But I think that, the life and death of languages, as soon as a language, with a language you will not get any economic advantage, as soon as it will be much more convenient to speak Persian and you will get access to many jobs and economic opportunities, of course you are going to move from one language to the other one. More or less that's the way languages, they are living and they are dying. So, here is the chronological span of the language from the 5th, 4th millennium BC up to 1000 AD. And about the geographic distribution, we know for sure it was spoken here. Most of our inscriptions, they come from Susa. So as you can see, there is a big problem here because Susa is in the western border of the Elamite sphere. And most of the texts are from here, not from the center, but from the periphery of the Elamite wall. So that's a problem. And as you can see here, we don't know what is going on. Why we don't know what is going on? Because we don't have any text, and as long as we don't have any text, we cannot know where the language is spoken here in the 3rd or 2nd millennium BC. But I think now with the decipherment of linear Elamite writing, here I can increase the area where Elamite was spoken up to the southeastern Iran, up to Kerman province. Okay? Because here we have some linear Elamite inscription and they are recording Elamite language. So actually, that's one of the points of the decipherment of linear Elamite. So, it is a dead language and it is an isolated language, as I told you, which makes it very complicated to understand. We cannot make any comparison with any dead or living languages. There were some hypotheses, so there are just hypotheses, and they are not consensual hypotheses, and we still think that it is an isolated language. But still, I'm going to present you the hypothesis. It was proposed since the beginning, as Irving was mentioning, that Elamite may be related to Dravidian languages spoken nowadays in Pakistan and India. So the scholar which is advocating the most this Dravidian hypothesis is David McAlpin. So he's been talking about that since the 1970s. And here is a paper published in 2022. And here is the current distribution of the Dravidian languages, so in southern India. And look at Brahui here, and actually David McAlpin is saying that in his 2022 paper that actually, Khuzi, Middle Elamite, that Elamite and Brahui could be related. That's the way he's presenting it. That's just an hypothesis. Okay, that's the first hypothesis from the beginning, 1855 up to now. And recently there was another linguist, French one, Marc Bavant, who proposed another hypothesis, relation between Elamite and Caucasian languages. Well, maybe you know the linguistic situation in Caucasus. It's very complicated, very interesting, with very weird languages. And he was proposing that maybe languages spoken in current Georgia and, by Caucasian people may be in a way related to Elamite. But still, these are just hypotheses. Okay? So, remember that dead language, it died 1,000 years ago, and isolated language. So, we are facing many problems in grammar, lexicon, and syntax, as we don't have any, we cannot make any comparison. And as I told you, our main knowledge comes from the trilingual inscriptions of the Achaemenid kings. So, these inscriptions, they are in the 6th, 4th century BC. I am going to talk about inscriptions around 2000 BC. So much older than the Achaemenid time. So look here. Here we have the beginning of the inscription of Darius, I think in Bizotud. Here is the Old Persian text. Adam Dariyavahush, I am Darius, anyway, the great kings of Persia. Here is the text in Old Persian. Here is the text in Elamite. So of course we are going to make comparison between the text in Elamite and Old Persian. And we are going to see that Adam, which means me, I, is the equivalent of the word in Elamite u. And actually it was read u, but now, thanks to the decipherment of linear Elamite writing, I can read it o. Well, anyway. Vazraka, great, big, that will correspond to this Elamite word. Pusha, son, that will correspond to the word shak in Elamite. Napa, great son, will correspond to the word in Elamite, rushak. So here I just want to explain you how do we know the meaning of some words in Elamite, for example, based on the translation in Old Persian. Okay? I, big, great, son, great son. So, for some people who may know the situation about Etruscan, I think that for Elamite we are in a bit in an Etruscan-like situation. We can read the language, but we are facing many problems in its translation, in discovering the meaning of the words. And you are going to see in the linear Elamite inscription I can read now, I found new words. Words in Elamite that were not in the dictionary of Ince and Aydemari Core in 1987. Just few notions of Elamite language, if I may. Elamite language is an isolate language. It is a position. The syntax is positional. It means the function of the words in the sentence depends on its position in sentence, like English or French nowadays. Usually it works like that. Subject, indirect object, direct object, resentive pronouns, adverb, and verb. Verb is at the end. An example. O, Sian, Kushir. O, I, Sian, the temple, Kushir, I built. I built the temple. In Sushinak ak Shimot, up in Tunir. And I gave what? The temple, which is going to be indicated by in. I gave it to them, and them with them, in the gods in Sushinak and Shimot. I built the temple, and to the gods in Sushinak and Shimot, to them it's the temple I gave. And here you may understand what are resentive pronouns. It's going to be pronouns which are just located just before the verbs, and they are going to indicate you the function of the word in the sentence. So another example, I don't want to give you too many examples about Elamite language. O Shutruk Narunte, I, King Shutruk Narunte. In Sushinak, the god of mine tells, commands me that, and that what is that, I should destroy Akkad. And here is the translation we could give. I, Shutruk Narunte, when in Sushinak my God commanded me, then I destroyed Akkad. But these are words I'm going to add in order to make the translation more understandable nowadays, okay? Because I'm not sure about when is if. Maybe we could translate if, for example. So here you have some notions about Elamite language. And now we can talk about the decipherment of linear Elamite. That was the introduction. Now you have access to all the stuff I knew before the decipherment of linear Elamite, and you understood how we know the Elamite language based on cuneiform. So 3 steps in the decipherment of linear Elamite. 1903 2070, 2000. Well, anyway, we're going to discuss the 3 steps because I was not the first one to be interested in linear Elamite. It had been discovered at the beginning of the 20th century in Susa, and from the beginning, scholars have been working on it. And unfortunately for them, and fortunately for me, they did not complete the decipherment. So, here is the situation in the ancient Near East. Here is the situation of writing around 3000 BC. You have proto-cuneiform here and Proto-Elamite tablets here. We are going to talk about Proto-Elamite tablets after. For specific reason, I don't know why, Proto-Elamite tablets, they disappeared around 3000, 2900 BC. Don't ask me why, I don't know why. Then cuneiform spread from southern Mesopotamia first to Syria. We found cuneiform tablets in 3 sites in Syria, Ebla, Tel Beida, and Mari, around at the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. Then all Syria and Mesopotamia at the end of the 3rd millennium BC, they was using cuneiform, and as you can see, cuneiform was brought for the first time in Iran, in Susa, when the city of Susa was annexed by the kings of Akkad, like Sargon the Great, around 2300 BC. So that they took Susa and they brought with them the cuneiform system. Actually, at that time, in the late 3rd millennium BC, linear Elamite writing was also used. For now, I can say for sure that it was used in the southern half of Iran. I'm expecting that someday we will find some linear Elamite inscriptions in the northern part of the Iranian plateau. And look how complex was the situation in the ancient Near East in the late 3rd millennium BC. If we consider writing systems, they were using also the Indus writing in the Indus civilization. So in the late 3rd millennium BC, in the ancient Near East, they were using cuneiform, linear Elamite, and Indus writing, completely three different writing systems. So the situation is amazing. And currently, we have inscription in linear Elamite writing in Susa, in Shadad, in Konar Sandal. Konar Sandal is Giroft. I'm going to talk about that this afternoon. In Mardash, one very, I think the most beautiful inscription is from Mardash. And of course, some inscriptions coming from Kamfiruz, which were recently published. And nowadays, we have 43 inscriptions in linear Elamite. Of course, if you compare this number with the number of cuneiform texts or hieroglyphic inscriptions we know, it's almost nothing. Almost nothing. We consider that maybe we know something like 1 million cuneiform texts nowadays. We are not sure about the real number. So I know that's ridiculous compared to cuneiform inscription. Anyway, we only knew something like 20 inscriptions at the beginning of years 2000. And as you can see, in the last 20 years, we doubled the number of linear Elamite inscriptions. So, this is how it looks like here. As you can see, the inscriptions, they were called from the beginning by the French excavators in Susa with the letter of the Latin alphabet. So, first inscription is A. And now, the last inscription, I call it S prime. So, I should change the system because it's not sustainable, but anyway. And some inscriptions are on stone artifacts, some of them on clay artifacts, and of course some of them on metallic vessels and silver vessels. We are going to discuss them a lot, because the key of the decipherment is in the silver vessels. And if you want to see some linear Elamite inscriptions, you will have to take the Eurostar and go to the Louvre, because I'm not going to talk too much about that, but French archaeologists played a very important role in Iranian archaeology. We had the monopoly of excavation, the legal monopoly of excavation. I'm telling that because in Iran, in Tehran University, whenever I was talking about that, they were asking me, the French, what did you do? Yeah, but we had a contract signed with the Qajar king. Maybe not a very good contract, but still. Anyway, I'm making this joke too. Okay, French, they got archaeology, and the British, they were smarter because they got the oil in Iran. But that was the time when the Qajar dynasty was selling the country, to foreigners. And 19 inscriptions, so almost half of the inscriptions currently known. They are in this room 231 in the Louvre. Here it is. And they are all from Susa, and they can be divided in two groups. Some texts not related to the king Puzon-Sushinak. You are going to hear about Puzon-Sushinak. He was a king ruling in Susa in the 22nd century BC. Here they are. So honestly, I understand them quite difficultly because most of them are fragmentary. So the meaning is almost lost. But still, please pay attention to text M. We are going to talk about that later. Okay, very important one. And there are inscriptions related with the name of King Puzon-Sushinak. Here they are. The first one, found in Susa actually. And we are going to start the story of the decipherment, linear Elamite decipherment, with inscription A, by the way. So, as soon as we discovered this text in 1903, so its name is La Tableau Lion, the lion table, because you have a kind of slab with the head of a lion. Okay, it comes from Susa. It is currently held in the Louvre. So look here in this area, you have that. So we were fortunate enough to find two texts. One recorded in cuneiform writing, written with the Akkadian language. Yeah, Akkadian, very easy to understand, as I told you. Huh? And here is the translation of this text in English. And I wrote in red all the proper names recorded in this inscription, like Sushinak, the god, Puzon-Sushinak, the king, Susa, the name of the father of Puzon-Sushinak. And then in the curse formula, you can find other names too. And the first guess was to consider that, okay, all these proper names, we find them in the cuneiform Akkadian inscription here, so maybe we are going to find them also in the linear Elamite text. Okay? And let's take a look at A. So, some clues for you. It's written from top to bottom, from the right to the left. And if you remember the proper names, there are two names, Puzon-Sushinak and Sushinak, the god Sushinak, where there is a common element, which is Sushinak. Can you see some sequences repeated in the text?
Yes.
Which line?
Yes. The second and the first one, the third, second, third, third.
Can you see these four signs? So according to you, what is the meaning of these four signs? Su-shi-na-ke. 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 Please pay attention to shi, like A, and na. Okay, we are going to find them in a few slides. So that's the beginning of the decipherment of linear Elamite, led as usual by a German, Ferdinand Borck, in 1905. As you can see, he found that quite quickly after the publication of this document, and that these are the first steps in the decipherment of linear Elamite writing. And after that, I'm not going to say that was quite like a stalemate, but there were two scholars in the 20th century which they played a very important role, Walter Rins and Piero Merigi, but actually they could not, for example, here is a list of signs with their hypothetical value published by Walter Rins in 1969, and is almost completely wrong. Almost completely wrong. Here is a list proposed by Merigi. Well, okay, some signs are correct. And I published a book in 2012 where I was accepting these values, and actually at that time 4 of them were wrong. So as you can see, at the beginning of in 2012 we had only 9 signs deciphered. Okay. By the way, I want to say a few words about Piero Merigi, a very great Italian scholar, and if he had access to the Marbubian collection with the Kunanki silver vessels, he would have led the decipherment in the 70s. Because whenever you are reading what he wrote, he was just lacking enough text. So please pay attention. What is necessary in a decipherment? Enough text and good copies of text. These are the basics. If you don't have that, you can be super smart, you can be super brave and courageous, working a lot on the inscription. You will go nowhere. So these signs, before 2018, actually, they were, I can say it now, they were properly identified. So, the turning point. Turning point came with the publication of new inscriptions. So, Houchang Maboubian published this book in 2004. I remember, I bought the book in the British Museum, so I remember that was quite an important turning point. And of course, I could see that in the book actually were published these three pictures. I call them X, Y, and Z, okay? And I could see, of course, wow, new linear Elamite inscriptions. Last time these things happened was something like 20 or 30 years ago, so I was super excited. But unfortunately, only one face of the vessels was published. And this prevented me from the decipherment for 10 years. I sold the book in 2006, and I had the chance to go and see the vessels only in 2015. And the decipherment, the turning point, was in 2017. So there is a direct relation between the moment I got access to the complete inscription and the moment I understood the system. Okay? Anyway, and I remember at that time, many people were skeptical about this vessel. We are not sure where they are coming from. They may be fake. And I remember at that time, I was in the same atmosphere. I was, okay, they may be fake, but I should go and see them. Okay, maybe they are fake. Maybe there's something good to be done about that. I published that in 2018, and actually that's the beginning of the decipherment in 2018. So, these vessels, they come from the area of Camp Firouz. Here it is. Camp Firouz, as you can see, is not too far from a very big and important Elamite city, which is called Anzan, or current Talimalian. So I think there is a specific relation of the vessels from Camp Firouz to Anzan. And the vessels of the Maboubian collection, here, as you can see some of them here, actually, some of them, they may also display some cuneiform inscriptions, and of course, cuneiform inscriptions, we can read them, and the cuneiform inscriptions tell us that these vessels are Kunanki vessels. The name of this specific type of vessel is Kunanki. And whenever you are going to look through all the archaeological data, these vessels, the specific Kunanki vessel with this specific carinated shape, they were only used between 2050 BC and 1850, 1800 BC. So with a very specific datation. And of course, you can find also the word Kunanki in the cuneiform text in the bookkeeping documentation of temples, where they are going to tell you that in the storerooms there are some Kunanki vessels, and they are only dated between the late 3rd and beginning of 2nd millennium BC. So both archaeological data and textual data, they tell us that these Kunanki vessels, they were used in the late 3rd, early 2nd millennium BC. Here are some pictures of X, inscription X. So 3 lines from top to bottom, from right to left. Z, 9 lines. I'm going to give you the translation of Z in a few slides. 9 lines from the right to the left. Of course, there are some holes, some breaks in the vessel, but I know what are the missing signs. I can reconstruct completely the text now. So, I went... so once again, thank you to the family Maboubian. You granted me the access to your collection. Once I got access to your collection, I drew all the inscriptions, and I came back to Tehran. I was living in Tehran at that time, and I started playing with all the inscriptions. And then I realized that so actually they don't have only 3 vessels, they have 8 vessels, Kunanki vessels with linear Lamite inscription. All of them, they are talking about the same topics. Okay? And I could find some most of them, I could find some common sequences between the different vessels. Here are the 8 inscriptions from the right to the left, and we are going to focus just on the beginning of these inscriptions. Okay, I was like that. Okay, let's look at them. And first point, it says that they are all starting with a common sign, with slight graphic variation, but still the same sign. Okay, or maybe introductory sign. Here there is something I don't understand. And here there is a 3 signs sequence, which I already know. So be careful. Here it's written from the left to the right, and here are the inscriptions of King Puzo Sushinake. And if you remember, here is written Sushinake. So here is the name of the king, and theoretically, after the name of the king, you may expect what? A title. The word king or the word title. So if this sequence means a title here, probably here it means the title too. Okay? You agree with me? Yeah. So I made the hypothesis, okay, it's in this 3 sign sequence, maybe a title too. And if this is a title too, between the introductory sign and the title, what could be these sequences? Names of kings. Oh, by the way, I'm just giving you the hypothesis which worked. All the wrong hypotheses, they are not very interesting. So I'm just telling you what was the good solution actually. And okay, so I focused on these sequences. So please pay attention to this sequence. So probably the name of a specific important character. I knew that he was probably living at the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, because that's the dating of the Kunanki vessel. Do you remember this sign? Shi. He is the first syllable in his name is Shi, and it seems that the 3rd and 4th signs they are repeated. So I was looking for a guy living at that time. Are the name in 4 syllables? Probably a king. The first one is Shi, and the 3rd and 4th syllable are probably similar. Once you gathered all these criteria, there is only one solution, only one guy who is matching all these criteria, and that guy is Shilrara. So maybe you don't know Shilrara, but Shilrara, we know him very well, and Shilrara is my Ptolemy, my Cleopatra, if I may say so. And Shilrara gave me the reading of 2 new signs, L and Ha. Okay? Okay, so I just want to, just from a personal point of view, I worked on linear Lamite since 2006. From 2006 to 2017, I found nothing. I found absolutely nothing. Okay, so in March 2017, in my flat in Tehran, I can read Shilrara. Okay, let's keep on. And what is this other sequence here? And actually, this sign, so both these names are recorded on the same vessel. So that must be a guy contemporary with Shilrara. Shilrara, he ruled around 1950 BC. I can read this sign, that's R at the end of Puzur Sushinake. And actually, the name of the father of Shilrara is Eparti the second. So, here, I could read, 5 minutes later, I was reading the name Eparti. And that gave me the value of 3 new signs, E, Pa, and Ti. 2 signs 3 signs. And at some point in the inscription, you find this sequence, which is repeated in all inscriptions, which is recorded in all inscriptions. Here it is. Sometimes it's recorded with 4 signs. Sometimes there is this sign in the middle. So you know what is this sign. What is this sign? We just talked about R, yeah, R. You remember this one?
No.
Na. And so you have 2 signs. And if you know a bit of Elamite history, you know that the main god worshipped in Iran at that time by people like Shirara or Eparti II, the main deity is Napiresha. Napiresha. So sometimes it's written with a geminated consonant, sometimes it's not written with a geminated consonant. There is a very nice and interesting point to say about geminated consonant in linear Elamite, but read the paper published in 2022, it's technical. And that gave me the value Pi, Re, and Sha. So just these 3 readings, Shilrara, Eparti, and Napiresha, gave me the values of 8 signs. And I read them in 10 minutes in 2007. So that was the turning point. So once again, it's a pure classical decipherment. So sometimes people asking me, yeah, did you use AI, computer stuff? No, not at all. The names of kings and gods. That's it. So in 2018, I published that, the values of these signs. And from 2018 to 2020, moment when I made the announcement of the decipherment of linear Elamite, decipherment was reached its end, more or less. And for you to understand how I'm going to say we because the paper is published with other co-authors, I'm going to mention them. We could decipher completely, almost completely, because now I can read 96% of the signs, based on our knowledge, previous knowledge of Elamite language. So don't ask me how I know Elamite language, because I've been telling you for 1 hour how I know what I know. Okay? I know Elamite because I know Akkadian and Old Persian, and I know Akkadian and Old Persian because we have Hebrew, Arabic, and these languages, and we could decipher cuneiform writing. From the known Elamite recorded in cuneiform to the unknown Elamite recorded with linear Elamite writing. So, if you want to have fun, you read this paper 2022, a bit technical. So here with my co-authors, Cambis Tabizadeh, Mathieu Cavant, Gian-Pietro Basello, and Jenny Marchesi. So that's the paper dealing mainly with the decipherment and the description of the system of linear Elamite. And we are going to publish very, very soon, inshallah, the edition of the 43 texts. Okay, because now we can read them, and so now we must publish them. First text, it's reading, translation, historical comments, linguistic comments. I'm going to give you a few translations, by the way, just to show you how we can translate them now. So, the end of the decipherment is based on this phenomenon. Here you have 2 vessels. One vessel of the king Sewe Palarurpak is contemporary of King Hammurabi of Babylon in the 18th century BC. And here is the Kunanki of King Itatu I. It's written there, O-Itatu, I-Itatu. And Itatu I, he ruled something like 2 centuries before Sewe Palarurpak, beginning of 20th century and 18th century. Here it's written in cuneiform, I can read it. Here it's written in linear Elamite, I cannot read it yet. And then I realized that some hymns and prayers recorded in Elamite in cuneiform here, they are strictly similar to prayers recorded in Elamite language, but with linear Elamite writing here in this vessel. And so here we are not in a situation, bilingual situation, we are in a digraphic situation. What do I mean with digraphic? One language, Elamite, recorded with 2 different writing systems, cuneiform and linear Elamite. Is it clear? This digraphic stuff, only one language, or different rating systems for one language. So let's take an example. In the vessel of Sewe Pala we can read these two lines. Mani ipi, sai ipi, urtu, kiri piu, piup, utakna. Don't ask me yet the meaning of that. Okay, Elamite prayer in cuneiform, so it dates back to the 18th century BC. And so it's written from the right to the left on this vessel, but here I'm showing it from the left to the right. It will be easier this way. If you read, these are exactly the same sentences, recorded with cuneiform and linear Elamite writing. And actually, when I understood that these two sentences, they mean the same, they are recording the same prayer, this comparison gave me the value of 5 or 6 signs. I could understand that is ma, that is sa, that is I, that is po, pu, putu, or what I read po now. So that was a very nice match. So when I'm talking about digraphic situation, this is what I'm referring to. Okay? And if I reconstruct now Elamite language, here it is. Manip, saip, hurt, kerepo, pe, hutakna. One remark. Why am I using this weird sign, a U with a circle on top? It's a convention we are proposing in the 2022 paper, just to say that we are not sure yet if it's to be read U or Ho. So it could be Hurt or Hort, could be Huta or Hota. We are not sure yet. We hope we will be able to precise the vocalic value of this sign. Well, anyway, and the translation, the verb at the end may be realized, may be made. Okay, what? The mani is probably a name of an artifact of bronze, and we know it's plural because you have the mark of the plural. So may the many of bronze, or the bronze manis, be realized, be made. Okay. May the many of bronze of, for or of, this is probably the indirect object, the attribution element in the sentence, of the people, of the devotion of mine. And the people of the devotion of mine. And sometimes I may propose as a translation for this sequence here, my clergy. May the bronze mani be realized, be made for my clergy. Or may the bronze mani of my clergy be realized, be made. That's the way. So you're going to ask me what are mani? I don't know, probably an artifact because it can be in bronze. But that's the way I could translate this sentence. So, digraphy, very important phenomenon, and you have to remember what I showed you at the beginning. That's an example of actually trigraphy for the same phonetic information recorded with 3 different writing systems. And also, we could use also this example. That's digraphy, actually. You have the subway in Tehran, where Bor Jemila de Tehran, it's written both in Arabic alphabet and Latin alphabet. This is digraphy. So, now I hope that you understood how I could decipher linear Elamite. Is there any question? Because I'm checking the time, I think there is just a few minutes for question about that. Is it clear? So as you can see, it's not an elimination, just from logical reasoning from the known to the unknown. No question? Yeah?
When you had breakthrough in Tehran in your flat, who did you call first to tell?
So I called nobody because I was not sure yet. I was very, very excited and happy, but still careful. So I did not talk too much about that. Because these were just few readings, and I had so many wrong guesses before that I called nobody actually. But I perfectly remember the moment. The moment I could reach Shirara actually. Yeah?
Oh, I was just wondering why the various kings of Persia and Egypt wrote, when they wrote inscriptions, wrote 3 languages
So why the Achaemenid kings, they recorded inscription in Old Persian, Elamite and Akkadian languages? I think because it pleased them, I guess, and they liked it this way, or it was probably for propaganda and for specific political purposes. But you know the question why, the intent of the people in the past, it's quite hard to answer this kind of question. Okay, so let's move from the decipherment. So now I hope that you understood the decipherment, or it was made, and now we are going to move. So decipherment is done. I can, if you, among the 43 texts, we have something like 2,000 occurrences of linear Elamite sign, if you make the addition of all the signs in all the 43 inscriptions, and I can read 1,900 signs out of 2,000 signs. So I can read more 95% of the signs. So decipherment is almost completely done. But still, I am facing problems in the translation, because language, as I told you, is still quite mysterious. I am going to give you a few examples, about 3 examples, by the way, of linear Elamite text. A vessel of Mardash and 2 vessels from the Mabubian collection, coming from Kanfiruz, from 2 different kings. So here is probably the most beautiful linear Elamite inscription. It is right now in Tehran, okay? It is called the Mardash to Dessets because it was found not too far from Persepolis Terrace in 1966. Here it is. Here is the text from the right to the left. So just a few words about this very nice and wonderful vessel. The vessel was probably made in Central Asia, in the Oxus civilization. It was brought in Iran, and the inscription probably dates back to the 21st century BC, because now I can date the inscription based on the specific shapes of linear Elamite signs, because there are some few evolutions in the signs shape, and based on this slight evolutions, I can propose some dating for artifacts. Well, anyway. So it's written from the right, and I may call this inscription opportunistic inscription, because they use a previously done vessel for a specific purpose. And as you can see, actually you cannot see, there's just one lady here, but there is another lady on the other side of the vessel. So it's written from the right to the left, but here I'm rating it from the left to the right. So here are the sides, the transliteration. So transliteration is here. So what do I mean by transliteration? It means the reading sign by sign, transliteration. Just for you to understand the way we are understanding things. Transliteration, transcription. Transcription is an attempt to reconstruct as faithfully as possible the way Elamite was probably pronounced. Okay? And then translation. Transliteration, transcription, translation. Zana Marabshahir, the lady of Marabshai, Shuarasu, Laniyina Oshare. Are 4, is it the subject, or is she the person the vessel is given? I am not sure about that, because I told you syntax is quite grammatical, and it's just based on the position of the words in the sentence. Here, in this case, I think she's not the subject, and it's probably the person who is receiving the artifact. By the way, I forgot to tell you, 44 signs and 2 sentences of 22 signs. So the inscription is not made like that, and probably the scribe thought a lot before inscribing the text. Of course, the verbs are at the end. O share. So for the lady of Marabshai, Shuwarashu, in silver, what? This vessel I made. So please pay attention to this verb, share. It means to make a metallic artifact, share, where I'm going to say a few words about this verb in a few slides. End of the first sentence. And then, Sian Ishmanirina, Umshad Kerenu Tenatia. Sian is the word for temple. Ishmanirina, I don't know, new word. Ish, I know that Ish means name, the name in Elamite. But here, I don't know at all how to interpret this sequence. I can read it, but I still cannot translate it. Is it a qualification of temple? Is it a place? Is it the name of a god? Related? It's related to the word temple, for sure. Bon, okay, that's a proper name, umshat, devotion for you out of, benevolently, I gave, I deposited, the two verbs are at the end. So, for, in the temple of Fishmanir, for maybe a goddess, god or goddess, umshat, the devotion, kere, for you, benevolently, I gave, I deposited. So, it's a very classic votive inscription. First sentence, I made. Second sentence, I gave. Okay? But as you can see, I'm still facing some problem in the translation of some section of the text. And of course, in the syntax, I am not sure of the relation between the different parts of the sentences. And we are something like 4,000 years ago with this text. And please also pay attention to this word, marapshai, because I think here, maybe we have the word Marashi. Marashi, maybe some of you know it. It's the name of southeastern Iran in 3rd millennium BC, but Marashi is the Sumerian name, and I'm proposing now that Marapshai could be their own real name, but we will talk more about that this afternoon during the time of the Jew presentation. Now, just before the break, I'm going to show you another text before the break. I'm going to show you two texts from the Mahboubian collection, and all the, so coming from Camp Firuz, and all these silver Kunanki silver vessels from the Mahboubian collection from Camp Firuz, they are all dealing with the same topic. They are prayers of the kings of Shimashki and the first Sukalman, so we are something like between 2050 and 1850 BC. Prayers made by these rulers asking the great God, Napi Resha means Napi God, Resha great, the great God, to grant them prosperity, fortune. I'm going to give you the word, Elamite word, I'm proposing to translate, prosperity, fortune, in exchange for their devotion, worship. So I am giving you worship for you to give me, to grant me fortune. Do ut des. I give for you to give back. So here is the inscription Z, very nice one, with some breaks, but it can be easily restored. Sorry, quite complicated figure, but King Itatu the first is here, okay, the son of King Tatu. Well, anyway, we are going to talk about this king, and the next one will be the inscription of Paraishan here. And here is the text. So it's written from the right to the left, but here I'm showing it to you from the left to the right. As you can see, I can reconstruct very, except here, I am 100% sure about the restoration. So here is the transliteration. And of course, you are interested in the translation. So, O Itatu Zanzoki Katru Hatantik Patek Naruntek Hanek Pinikirik. I, Itatu, so that's Itatu the first. So we have the name of the king and his title. I am Lord King and Katru of Hatanti. And by the way, Elam is not the way the Elamites, they are calling their country. They are never using the word Elam. That's why I'm trying to clean Iranian history from the word Elam. Elam is a Mesopotamian notion. It's the way the Mesopotamians, they are looking at these people, islanders, on the island in the east. They are calling themselves Hatanti. That's why I'm proposing to clean complete and stop using the word Elam, because that's just the Mesopotamian. If you are interested in the way Mesopotamian, they are considering geographic area around them. Okay, the word may have a value, but if you are interested in the way these people in Elam or in Iran, they are calling themselves, they are never using Elam. Elam, in a way, in Mesopotamian mind, it means Orient, the Orient. But of course, they were not calling themselves the Oriental, the people in Iran. The main toponym is Hatanti. That's why I'm proposing to call Elamite language, not Elamite language anymore, but Hatantite language. Okay? Bon, anyway. Katru of Hatanti, Katru is the title. I am the shepherd, Patek, the shepherd of Narunte. Narunte is the god of sun. It corresponds to Shamash. And the beloved one of Pinekir. Pinekir is probably the goddess who correspond to Inanna or Ishtar. So we have the title of the king. For my life, I heard, I obeyed. Actually, I don't have my, I just have life, I heard. Well, that's why I'm a bit wide. If he wanted to say for my life, he would have written takme ome, harpu. Here it's just written takme. Oh, okay. I'm writing the verbs in red. Huh? Kush parawasia, quite complicated to understand. I think there is probably a relation between these two verbs because harpu it means I heard and sia it means I saw. So very probably there is a relation between them. So if I'm just translating word by word, progeny, noble, mother, I saw. So how can I understand this sequence? Kush par awa. It does not make clear sense to me now. Lanishare, that is clear. In silver, I made. Okay, quite clear. And Napiresha, so probably a title of Napiresha, which I still do not understand. Huteu Shakir. For you, out of devotion, I gave, I put, okay, to you Napiresha. Who is the Huteu Shak? I gave, okay. It is you. So, nu, it is you. O, it is I. Huh? And just for you to remember these Elamite articles. It is you who lead. I am not sure about your translation of ute as to lead, by the way. And then we have a curse formula. Pet lakna, with specific verbs recorded with the second conjugation in Elamite. You are going to see they are all ending in kna. May the rebellion be suppressed. Ras al-makna. May it disappear forever. Shara petir kipakna. May the corpses of the assembled enemy be peeled up. Zonzon petit kalkum shukna. I don't know what it means. But I know it's part of the curse formula. Il kazakna. May it be smashed or hammered. So end of the curse formula, and we are switching back to prayer at the end. You remember this one, this sentence? Mani psaid urt kerepope utakna. We talked about a few slides before. And shutme shatme takmet zemi inurarpu, night, day, lifelong zemi. So this is the word I'm proposing to translate for fortune, prosperity. It from you, I heard, I obeyed. And so the two important notions in this inscription are the kere, the devotion, the worship from the king, and is expecting from the god Zemi, fortune. So I propose we make a break, 15 minutes break, and we, because I think you need to breathe a little bit, and we resume at 11:30. Okay? There are so many things to say, so sorry, I'm quite strict with the time schedule. So, we discussed a first Kunanki vessel made by Itatu I around 1970 BC. And now we are going to discuss this Kunanki, silver Kunanki vessel, which is, in the current state of my knowledge, is the most recent, is the last inscription recorded with linear Elamite writing. I can date it quite precisely from let's say, the beginning of the 19th century BC, because of the name of the king I can read on it. This king is King Palaishan, and we know him before. He was one of the first Sukalmar. He belongs to the Sukalmar dynasty. And by the way, maybe some of you know the name Sukalmar. Sukalmar is just the Mesopotamian translation of the Elamite title Likawe Resha. Mar, it means big, great, Resha, and Sukal, it corresponds to Likawe. So that's why I'm proposing to call this dynasty not anymore Sukalmar, but the Likawe Resha dynasty. Anyway, the dynasty of the great Likawe. So this text is recorded from the right to the left on only one line, turning all around the vessel like that. Very interesting, this phenomenon. And here is the text with the transliteration. Oh, okay, let's keep on. Let's start with the translation. E napiresha zet shilrakri. E, it means oh napiresha. Zet shilrakri. Zet is the word for, if it refers to God, it means Lord. If it refers to men, it means, we are going to translate it, king. E o napiresha, mighty Lord. So the invocation. Then the name of the ruler and all his title. O Palaishan, Lipa Napireshaki, Likawe Reshaki, Meni Kratamtik. As you can see, it is the first person with the ke element at the end of all the word. I am Palaishan, the servant of Napiresha, the great Likawe, the many of Khatamti, and not Elam, Khatamti. Many sometimes we may propose that the word men in Elamite means crown. So menik, it means the crowned one. Bon. Anyway, that's the title. So end of the title here with many Khatamtik here. Lanishari, I made this vessel in silver. Okay, end of the first sentence. Here, okay, I admit I cannot read this sign here. It's one of the few signs I cannot read. Actually, there are 4 signs I still cannot read. I'm going to show them to you. So I cannot read it, but I'm pretty sure that was not very interesting, the stuff which is written there. And here it's probably the she sign, not very well preserved. But anyway, I cannot read this section. Napiresha nu kerewata, and to you, Napiresha, out of devotion, I gave. So the classical shareta, I made, I gave. Nu utenti, it is you who lead. I'm not sure about the value to lead of ute. And then 2 prayers, shutne shatne, mor chitekpi ho alekle. Night and day, the sacrifice for the army or for the soldiers by me, may be realized. The verb is there. And the final prayer, Kitin zemi nun kerenahelle, may I obtain from you, out of devotion, kere, what? Kitin zemi. Kitin is long, and zemi is the word I'm proposing to translate for fortune, grace, prosperity, whatever you want from the God. And you are going to give him kere in exchange of zemi. One of the other vessels, I cannot show you all the text from the Maboubian collection, but one of the other vessels is this one, and it's very interesting. The iconography is very interesting. On one of them, you have the depiction of this king, and actually I know who he is, because it's written here just nearby his knee, is the king Hiktatu. And as you can see, is maybe some of you are familiar with Mesopotamian iconography, where kings, they are shown praying gods in temples, and the prayer position in Mesopotamia is this one. In Iran, in Elam, the position is this one. Okay? As you can see, that guy is praying. Actually, maybe the most ancient depiction of trousers in the world, but that's another topic. Okay, he's praying, and usually we know this kind of scene on ceilings in the Elamite or Adaptite world, and usually we have the king standing just beside the god or the statue of the god. And so, usually the complete scene is this one, the king standing in front of the god. And here, as you can see, it's very exceptional because the king is shown alone. And I think it's because the scene was completed when the silver vessel was deposited in front of the statue of the god in the temple. And once it was deposited there, the scene was completed. And that's why I think that all these Kunamki silver vessels with linear Lamite text, they were the original function is that they were probably deposited in the temple of Napiresha in Anzan, nearby the statue of the god Napiresha. And this way you could complete the scene. And the king is giving kere, and in exchange of kere is expecting zemi. And maybe, this is just a hypothesis, I'm not sure about that, maybe this weird waters stuff spreading from the god to the kings on sealed iconography could be a depiction in a water-like depiction of prosperity, fortune, from the god to the king. Well, that's just an hypothesis, I'm not sure about that. Okay, this I'm not sure you're interested in, but I was trying to compare. So now the nice thing is we can make comparison between Elamite formula written in linear Elamite writing and cuneiform writing. And look here, I'm showing you from the most ancient to the most recent, from the beginning of 2nd millennium BC to the end of 2nd millennium BC, different prayer, but all based on the same structure. And they are all referring to Zemi. And as you can see, Zemi, in the text of Itatu, it is qualified with Takme. Takme means life. So, in these two texts, the king is expecting a lifelong Zemi. From the text of Palaishan, the qualifier of Zemi will not be Takme anymore, but will be Kitin. Kitin, it means a long time. Okay? Now, at the beginning, they were just asking Zemi like that, and from the time of Sewe Palarupak, from 18th century BC, they are asking Zemi for who? The Hurt of Anzan and Susa, the people of Anzan and Susa, which was lacking before. So that's an innovation. And in all the cases, the Zemi is to be obtained, the verb obtain, hey, here. But in one case, the one we just saw, it is related to the verb harpu, which means to hear, to obey. So now we can make some linguistic analysis of the different prayer, and we can understand the way this very standardized formula, they evolved, for example, during the 2nd millennium BC. So, as I told you, at the beginning I was thinking that these vessels, they were found in graves, because usually whenever you find some very precious artifacts, they can only come from ores or graves, okay? And at the beginning, in the 2018 paper, I proposed they are probably related to funerary purposes. But then, now I can read them, there is no specific mention about death. And they are only dealing with Napiresha, and please Napiresha, I am giving you the kere, and please give me the zemi. So that's why I think that, in a way, these silver vessels, they are materializing for perpetuity the prayers of the king to Napiresha. And by putting the vessel in the temple, they are showing the king praying for eternity. Okay? And, of course, you may think, okay, it's a gift from the king to the god, but also it's a king giving silver vessels to the clergy of the god. And we may also interpret that, okay, clergymen, I am giving you silver artifact, kere, so I am expecting from you political support. We may also interpret it this way. Kere for zemi. Money for political support. By the way, we know that these Kunamki vessels, they are kept in the sacristy or treasure of temples. We have this very nice paper of David Owen, where we have this, for example, at the time of Shushin of Ur, so we are in the 21st century, for example, there are 2 bronze Kunamki listed in the sacristy of the temple in Mesopotamia. So we know that these vessels also, they were kept among the vessels used for liturgy in Mesopotamian temples. So where is theoretically the temple of Napiresha? So I don't know, but I think it must be in Anzan, Talimalian. So here we are, here. And Talimalian, here it is. It was excavated in. So Talimalian is the current name, and the ancient name is Anzan. It was excavated in the 70s, and we could identify. It's a very, very important site. Very, very important site for Iranian history. Very interesting to see that in the Mavdash plain, you have Talimalian, which played a very important role. 50 kilometers away, Persepolis, few kilometers away, Istar. So the Mavdash plain, from the late 4th millennium BC to the Sassanid time, was almost all the time a very important political center in Iranian history, which is fascinating whenever you are thinking about that. Well, anyway. So here is a view of Talimalian. You can see clearly the walls, fortification walls built at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC. Here is the way I can read it in linear Elamite text, Anzan. So sometimes you may find Anshan. And now I am disturbing everybody saying Anzan because it's not written with sharp, it is written with the za sign, Anzan. And so we know that Talimalian is Anzan since the beginning of the 1970s. And actually, well, sorry, the translation is in French. And we found the brick of the king Utlutush in Sushinak. He ruled in the 12th century BC. And actually, at the end, he said, in Anzan, I rebuilt in baked bricks the temple of Napiresha, Kireresha, in Sushinak, and Shimon. So it seems that in the 12th century BC, at least, there was a temple of Napiresha in Anzan. That's why I'm proposing to look for the temple of Napiresha in Anzan. And of course, I know that if someday we have the chance to resume excavation in Talimalian, if someday we have the chance to find the temple of Napiresha, don't expect the archaeologists to find the temple full of silver vessels. Of course, they were probably all stolen or recycled for the purpose. And for a specific reason, we only found the vessels which were taken from the temple, put in a specific place. Don't ask me why, but very probably we are not going to find any specific silver vessel in the temple of Napiresha in Anzan. And just for you to know that Anzan probably played a very important role in Iranian history, and there is in the 2nd millennium BC, it's maybe the biggest site in Iran. It reached 200 hectares. And we know, of course, you know this artifact, and it's here in the British Museum, and the cylinder of Cyrus. And Cyrus, so we are in the end of the 6th century BC, and look, Cyrus is telling us, okay, here is his title, and he is the son of Cambyses I, the great king of the city of Anzan, grandson of Cyrus. So it seems that the first Achaemenid rulers, the first Persian kings, before being great king of the universe, that was the role of Cyrus II, Cyrus the Great, the first title they were using was King of Anzan. Very probably in the 8th, 7th centuries BC, Anzan was ruined at that time, was not occupied anymore. But it was so important in imagination at that time that they were still referring to the title King of Anzan. Okay, so I gave as an example 3 texts, linear Elamite texts, and now we are going to see other consequences of the decipherment of the linear Elamite writing. So one of them, I think, it's a new way of considering the evolution of writing in the world. Up to the decipherment, usually we were considering the development of writing in the world according to a progressive phoneticization process. So I'm going to discuss that. Okay, if I am asking you to write 1,000 euros, sorry, I should have said 1,000 pounds, but 1,000 euros, or you would write that, 1,000 euros, for example. Or would you write 1,000 euros?
I would How would I write it? 1000
Yeah, or
or 1K? Wow.
yeah, that will be the two options. So here is the way you are going to record the phonetic information 1,000 euros, okay, in English. Here, okay, you can read it 1,000 euros, but I'm going to read it 1,000 euros. An Iranian is going to read it 1,000 euro. So here you did not record the sound, but you recorded the ID of 1,000. Is it clear? So if you understood that, you understood everything about writing systems in the world, because all the writing systems, they are working with phonetic notation or what we call now logographic or logogrammatic notation. Okay? And all these are the two big principles of writing in the world, from the beginning up to now. And usually it's not either only for logographic or just phonographic. It's a mix of both of them. Oh yes, that's anyway. So let's go back to the place where everything started, the ancient Near East. And as you remember, in the 3rd millennium BC, we have 4 writing systems. We have the hieroglyphs and hieratic writing systems in Egypt. We have cuneiform in Mesopotamia. We have linear Elamite in Iran. And we have the Indus writing in the Indus civilization. So, just a few words about that. Still not deciphered. Irving was talking about the Indus writing. We are still working on it. I'm not super confident, but anyway, just for you to take a look at some of these ceilings. This writing system was used between 2600 and 1900 BC, so contemporary with linear Elamite, anyway. And when I was working on linear Elamite, I was like, okay, at that time, what are the other writing systems? Okay, so I cannot use linear Indus writing because it's not deciphered. So all do hieroglyphs and cuneiform writings work. So these are mixed writing systems. Look, I am giving you 3 different spellings of the word sharum. Sharum in Akkadian, it means king. They could write sharum this way, sha-ar-ru-um, or this way, shar-ru-um. This way, shar-ru-rum. So these 3 ways, there it is recorded phonetically. They could record it with a specific logogram, which we call lugal. So it refers to the Sumerian word, but still it's a logogram. And look at this way, lugal-rum. And here they are going to add a phonetic complement just for you to make perfectly clear that you should read that sharum. Okay, maybe let's use this example. Look, the king. Phonetic notation, very clear. The king, with a logogram, telling you that it is the king. The king, with a phonetic complement, telling you that, okay, the sign before should be read king. And this one, I am asking you to do something. They were working like that with cuneiform. And here, in this case, this sign, which was used for its logogrammatic value, is going to switch to a phonetic one. They were doing that with cuneiform, which means that it's complicated. Cuneiform can be quite complicated. Okay? And by the way, in hieroglyphs, they were also working with logograms, phonograms, and classifiers, a bit like cuneiform, by the way. So just to give you an example, the stele of Meru, it was found probably nearby Luxor in Egypt. It dates back to 2000 BC, so more or less the time of the linear Elamite inscription. And here, in blue, I'm showing you all the signs which are used for the phonetic values. In orange, all the logograms, and in red, all the classifiers. And as you can see, only 66% of the signs in this inscription are used for phonetic value, And here you can see clearly the mixed writing system of Egyptian, both logogrammatic and phonetic signs. And just an example also for cuneiform, from the Code of Hammurabi, 18th century BC, found in Susa and now in the Louvre. Here is the drawing, the transliteration, the transcription. And look, these two signs. So usually in the transliteration, the logograms, they are recorded in transliteration with capital letter, as you can see here, Lugal and Utu. And Lugal is the sign which means king, Lugal, and look, in the transcription is going to be read Shar, and Utu is going to be read Shamash. Lugal, it means king, and as the text is in Akkadian, it should be read Shar, and Utu, it means the sun, the god of the sun, and we know that Utu, that guy here, in Akkadian, it is to be read Shamash. And for example, if some of you speak Arabic, you know that the word in Arabic for sun is Shams. Shamash, Shams, it's the same origin. And here, if I wanted to write it like that, that will be this way: Hammurabi, the king of justice, to whom the sun, the trophy gave, I am. And here is a normal translation. So just for you to understand the mixed writing system of cuneiform using both phonograms and logograms. And by the way, for example, Maya glyphs, they are also, just for you, so we are in Mexico, of course. Maya glyphs is also working the same with a mixed notation. So just here an example of the word Bahlam, which means jaguar in Maya Quiché. Here it's written with a logogram. Here you have the head of the jaguar, but here with a phonetic complement ma, Bahlam ma, which tells you, be careful at the end, there is a m. And here it is written ba-la-ma. So it's written just phonetically. Okay, and here you can see that just for the same word, it can be recorded with three different spellings. Pure logogrammatic, logogrammatic and phonogrammatic, and pure phonogrammatic. Okay, so Maya glyphs works the same as hieroglyphs and cuneiform, mixed writing system, both phonograms and logograms. Is it clear? Yeah? Oh, well. Okay. And before, we were thinking that, yeah, from the beginning, in the 3rd millennium BC, based on hieroglyphs and cuneiform, we have mixed writing system, both logograms and phonograms, and they are going to be progressively to be more and more, they are going to turn more and more phonetic, and they are going to turn to complete phonetic writing system only in the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, around 1500 BC. And usually, what is presented as the most ancient pure writing, phonetic writing system in the world is Proto-Sinaitic. So I'm trying to use an artifact in the British Museum. And here it is with this notation, which would mean to my lady or to goddess Baalat. And here we are dealing with Proto-Sinaitic alphabet at the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, which was considered as the most ancient pure phonetic, just phonetic writing system. Okay. Anyway. But if you remember the Mardashed vessel, what are these signs? What are the functions of these signs? Phonetic. They are just phonetic. There is no logogram. We are at the end of the 3rd millennium BC. So more than 500 years before the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet. The linear that was I came to this point just about after the completion of the decipherment. I realized that they are just phonetic signs in linear Elamite. It's pure phonetic writing system. It was honestly, it was a surprise. I was looking for the logograms. Where are the logograms? I still did not find any logograms in the linear Elamite writing, and that was quite a big surprise for me. This. And by the way, pure phonetic rating system and working according to a very strong logic with 5 vocalic signs, 12 consonantal ones, and 60 syllabic ones, and working according to a phonetic grid which could be described as an alpha syllabary. You're going to understand? So, do you remember text M? Nobody paid attention to text M. It was a clay artifact, few broken, okay? And by the way, text M, so one side, the other side, look, on side A, you can read that. E, U, O, A, I. E, U, A, I, it means nothing. E, U, A, I, it's nothing. And on the other side, here, well, unfortunately it's broken, but you can read that. P, 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 Papi, M, 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 And we know that in the ancient Near East, lenticular tablets, discs like that, they are usually school tablets. Here, it's probably a school exercise of, I don't know, a boy or whatever, practicing linear Elamite, learning linear Elamite, and learning linear Elamite rating according to a phonetic grid. So this, it's not a modern projection on linear Elamite. Of course, I'm using the current alphabetic order, A, E, I, O, U, but actually here, in this tablet, you can see some fragment of this phonetic grid. So, 5 vowels, 12 consonants, and you have to imagine the crossing of the 12 consonants and the 5 vowels, and you will get 60 syllabic signs. Kakekikoku, pakekikoku, mamemimo. Okay? So theoretically, the system works with only 77 signs. 5 plus 12 plus 60. Okay, these are the 4 signs I still cannot read, but as you can see, there are still some theoretically values I still did not find. I will explain you that later, why there is this column here. And so, it changed a lot in the way we are considering the evolution of writing, because it seems that in Iran, at least from in the late 3rd millennium BC, they were using a very simple, very logical, and pure phonetic writing system. And, of course, I'm going to tell you that's the most important discovery of the century, of course. But, honestly, that's quite a shock in the way we are considering the history of writing in the world. Okay, here is the phonetic grid. Now, please pay attention. U is recorded with the same sign as W, which is logical. Why there is this weird column with this specific U sign with a small circle? Because, as I told you, I am not sure yet if it is lo or lu, no or nu, ro or ru, sho or shu. That's why I'm putting them here for now, but I hope with more text I will be able to precise the specific vocalic values of these signs. There are, okay, the system seems to be very logical, but still there are some few discrepancies, few irregularities in the system. I have two different signs for the sound P, the sound K, the sound Li, the sound P. I don't know why. Okay, I still did not find the sign for C, To, Wi, Wo, Wu, and Z. I still have to find. And of course, among the 4 signs I still have to decipher, I think that the 4 signs I still have to decipher, they should be put in some of these boxes. Huh? Well, I need more documents in order to associate a specific value to one of the 4 remaining signs I still have to decipher. So I need more text. Okay, so I guess I'm going to move a little bit more technical. So, if you pay attention to linear Elamite, writing can be said to be quite adapted to a language in which most of the words, the bases, they work. They're either CVC, so consonant, vowel, consonant, like pet. It's going to be recorded in linear Elamite pet, CVC/C. or CV, a word like Zana. So Zana means lady in Elamite, which may be spelled with 2 syllabic signs, Zana. We have also a few cases of VCV words, like Awa, which means mother. It's going to be spelled vowel and then a syllabic sign, Awa. We have also some CCV words like Halma, Shilra, some usually verbs, and they are going to be recorded this way. And of course, to this basis, you are going to add at the end some suffixes, either consonantal suffixes or syllabic ones. So systems is very well adapted to the features of Elamite language. And now another point, because I am still facing some problem in translations, as you could understand, but now I think we made huge progress in phonology, Elamite phonology. What do I mean by Elamite phonology? It means the way we can reconstruct very precisely the real sound of the language. I'm giving you a few examples. Here is the word te-inti. The word te-inti, which is a thing which we know it means lord or king. Actually, this word in cuneiform is written either te-inti, si-inti, or she-inti. And usually we were reconstructing this word te-inti as king or lord. This word I found it and I'm reading it with 3 signs zet in linear Elamite. So what is going on there? Why are they writing this word te-inti, the same word te-inti in cuneiform, and why it is written zent in linear Elamite? First of all, there is no cuneiform sign used in Iran in the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. There is no cuneiform sign recording the sound z. So as a scribe, if you want to write zent, and you don't have any sign recording the sound z, you are going to be obliged to find the closest signs, closest to z. So sometimes some scribes they were using te, sometimes they were using si, sometimes they were using she. Before we were thinking that they were just weird dialectical variants of the words, but actually now we understand that cuneiform is, we knew it before, but it's not well adapted to Elamite phonology. So depending on the choice of the scribe, sometimes it was writing te in t, si in t, or she in t, because they did not have any sign recording the sound z. Okay? Okay, I just thought that. And in cuneiform, there are some logograms, but of course there are some phonograms. And the phonograms in cuneiform, there are other vocalic signs or syllabic signs. They don't have any sign recording just one consonant. Or are you going to record a word where at the end of the word you have 2 consonants? Zent. In cuneiform, you are obliged to use 2 syllabic signs. And of course they were using here T, but very probably they were not pronouncing the final I. They could not record it differently because they don't have just a cuneiform sign recording the sound T. Okay? So we moved from the word te-inti to the word now. So I say, I'm not sure about the real pronunciation of z, so cent or thent. Anyway, it's much more precise than te-inti. So, and here it's just an example about among many other ones, just for you to, I'm telling you when I'm meaning progress in the phonology of Elamite language. Here you have a very nice example. So before, we had access to the word Z through the cuneiform prism. And now, thanks to linear Elamite, we can go back directly to the source of the Elamite language based on a specific rating system which was specifically developed and adapted to Elamite phonology. Okay? Another just another example. We knew it. I'm not saying something new. We knew it before that cuneiform was not well adapted to Elamite, because cuneiform, you have to consider that cuneiform was first developed for Sumerian language, and then it was expanded to record Akkadian language in the 3rd millennium BC, and then from the late 3rd, early 2nd millennium BC, they started to use cuneiform to record Elamite, then Hittite, Urit, and many other languages. So, of course, we knew it before that cuneiform is not well adapted for these languages. Like today, Arabic alphabet is not well adapted to record Persian language, because that's a writing system developed for a specific language, Arabic, and of course Persian is an Indo-European language, and it does not work like Arabic language. And look, he, ke, le, re. Why I'm showing you that? In cuneiform, they are not making any distinction between he and he. There is just the sign he. And actually, in Elamite, I found 2 signs, he and he. So every time I may find a sign he or e in a word in linear Elamite, it's going to be recorded like he in cuneiform. So, how may I be clearer? My point is they were not making the distinction in cuneiform between he and e, but they are doing it in linear Elamite. The same with ki. That's why before we were reading the word for devotion like kiri, and now we can read it kere. That's why before we were reading the name of the god. Maybe you heard about the name of the god Napirisha, and maybe you heard what I was saying up to now. I was saying Napiresha, because this sign is used in the name of the god Napiresha, and not this one. So these are progresses in the phonology of the Elamite language, because this writing system was specifically developed for Elamite language. And now I think there are some very nice, because the decipherment has many consequences. And look here, I recorded all the different attestations of this sequence in silver I made. And look, in the most ancient inscription, it's written this way, Share, from until 2000 BC. In the most ancient, in the most recent, it's written Shari, around 1900 BC. And in the between, there is a stage where, as the pronunciation of the verb is moving from share to shari, they are not sure anymore which vowel they should write, and so that's why they record, there are this specific spelling where they are just recording the consonant r, but they are not recording the vowel anymore, because I think that right at that time the pronunciation was moving from share to shari. Now, based on linear Elamite, I can see this kind of phenomenon of linguistic evolution from A to E. So this is just one of the consequences of the decipherment of linear Elamite. Is it clear? Yeah. Among the other consequences of the decipherment, I think now we have a pretty good knowledge about the sign evolution and the sign distribution, and I think we can make a clear distinction between 2 traditions, a southwestern one and a southeastern one. Southwestern one, Susa and Fars, and southeastern one in Kerman province and around Konarsenal and Shahadad. So, I'm just going to take 3 examples. Look, sign O. Here it is, or it is written in Proto-Elamite. Here are all the signs attested in the West. Shapes is going to remain the same, but then it's going to change quite a lot. In the East, it's going to remain the same for all the history of this sign. Look, sign K in Proto-Elamite tablets is going to turn this way. It's going to change quite a lot in the West, but in the East, it seems that in the East they are more conservative than in the West. And the same, also, not exactly the same story with sign Ru. But now we can make the history, we can, like a bit like the history of the cuneiform signs, we can make such an history for the Proto-Elamite to Linear Elamite signs, from 3300 BC to the beginning of the second millennium BC. And just among the 77 signs, most of the signs, they are similar between the west, southwestern Iran and southeastern Iran, but actually for 12 of them, here are in blue the variants from southwestern Iran. I know that for sure this sign is Ke in Susa, but Ke in Kerman. Me in Susa, Me in Kerman. Ni in Susa, Ni in Kerman, and so on. And now, whenever I'm finding a new inscription, I don't know where it's coming from, like for example this one, because I don't know where it's coming from. Let's look at it. But based on this variant, I am sure that it comes from the east, southeastern Europe, because of the specific variants used for these signs. So that's another progress in our understanding of the linear Elamite writing. There is clearly a southwestern graphic tradition and a southeastern graphic one. And so I told you another consequences is now that before we were thinking that Elamite was just spoken here, and Matthew Stopper was talking about the unsettled question of the eastern extent of the Elamite language area. But as I told you, now I can be sure that it was at least spoken until up to this area. And I think that people working in Indus Valley and trying to decipher, because actually when I deciphered linear Elamite, many people working in Indus told me, yes, based on linear Elamite, we are going to make big progress with Indus writing. I don't think so, because linear Elamite, as you could see, it's a pure phonetic writing system with very few signs, less than 100 signs. In Indus, we have a system working with 500, 600 different signs. So it's a mixed writing system with logograms and phonograms. So I don't think that linear Elamite is going to help for the decipherment of Indus writing. But this being said, now I am sure that Elamite language was spoken at least up to the Kerman province. And Kerman province, we are not far anymore from Pakistan. So maybe we should work with the hypothesis that some of these inscription in the Indus, they might record a specific version of Elamite language, Eastern Elamite language. That's just an hypothesis. And a few words about, because I've been telling you, what a wonderful writing system, so wonderful, very precise, very economical writing system, by the way, just 77 signs. If you ask an Egyptologist, how many signs are used in hieroglyphs? So first of all, he's going to answer you, it depends. It depends on a specific area and specific period, but you try to get a number, and finally they're going to tell you, usually hieroglyphs works with 1,000 signs. Cuneiform, if you ask a question to an archaeologist, he's going to answer you, it depends on a specific period and a specific place. But if you try to ask more questions, he's going to, or she's going to answer you several hundred signs, 300, 400, 500 signs. Here, if you understood, linear Elamite is working just with 77 signs. Much more simple, much more simple. I think it may have, I'm not sure about that, but it may have some consequences on the literacy rate of society. But that's a big topic, and it's just based out of hypothesis, but considering the number of signs, we may wonder about that. Okay, this being said, this writing system seems to be wonderful, quite simple, very precise in the notation of Elamite language. So why did it disappear at the beginning of the second millennium BC? What happened? So I think I'm not sure about that, but I think there are two reasons. There are two phenomena, contemporary phenomena, but clearly distinct. In the West, southwestern Iran, at that time, at the beginning of the second millennium BC, cuneiform was a bit like Latin alphabet in 20th century. That was the writing system which was promoted by Mesopotamian, and probably it had a huge cultural impact. And that's why they probably moved the scribe from linear Elamite to cuneiform writing system. And actually, there was a very interesting period in the 20th century BC, between 2000 BC and 1900 BC, where the scribes, they could actually use both rating systems to record Elamite rating. The digraphic situation. Just for you to understand clearly the situation, it's a bit like in Turkey in the 1920s, when Atatürk decided to record the Turkish language. He decided to move from the Arabic alphabet to the Latin alphabet. So I don't know how it happened in Iran at that time, but they moved from linear Elamite to cuneiform, and there is a very nice things to say here, I think. The most ancient Elamite inscription written with cuneiform, they are very, very special, because at the beginning, the scribes, they are only using phonetic signs, and they are only using vocalic and simple syllabic signs. They are never using logograms or complex syllabic signs like CVC signs. Or maybe it's a bit complicated what I'm telling you. At the beginning, archaeologists were thinking that, look at these stupid Elamites. They don't understand the cuneiform rating system. That's why they are not able to use the logograms and to use the complex syllabic signs. And now, I propose that, no, they are not stupid. It's just that they did not want to use them. They clearly discarded the logograms and the complex cuneiform signs because they, at the beginning, they wanted to use cuneiform as they were using linear Elamite rating system. Well, very complicated. No. Anyway, so, yeah. Well, they moved from linear Elamite to cuneiform. So, Mesopotamian influence in the west, and in the east, collapse, urban collapse in the beginning of 2nd millennium BC, not only just in southeastern Iran, Oxus civilization, Indus civilization, all completely collapsed. So that was the end of the big cities, of the 3rd millennium big cities, and we have nothing. You will see this afternoon, I'm going to talk about Giroft archaeology. We found in survey many sites from the 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd millennium BC, no site for the 2nd millennium BC, and then we have a lot of sites for the 1st millennium BC. So something happened. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me what. We don't know. But end of the cities, so end very probably of the scribal tradition, more or less at the same time than the Mesopotamian influence. And we may wonder why cuneiform influenced Iran and why it was not the contrary, why linear Elamite did not go in the West. Because, in a way, I think it was so well adapted to Elamite language, linear Elamite, that it could not be used for any other languages like Akkadian or Sumerian. That's why they did not start using it in Mesopotamia, where actually they had a quite big scribal tradition with cuneiform. So, these are my hypotheses about the death of linear Elamite around 1900 BC, and actually we saw the most recent inscription, the inscription of Palaishan. Okay, so next project, I told about the consequences of the decipherment. Next project, so just to tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm developing a font for the linear Elamite writing. I'm going to show you that. So I hope that in a few years you will be able to send SMS messages on your mobile with linear Elamite writing. And then early Proto-Iranian writing or Proto-Elamite writing. So the font is developed with Sina Fakour. He's a designer and a typographe. I met him in Atelier National de Recherche Typographique in Nancy. And with Sina, we worked on this project together. And first of all, we tried to create the ideal form of the signs. So here are all the signs A. Here are all the signs A. And we are going to gather them, and from this cloud, we are going to develop the ideal shape of A. So we made the same work for all the signs. I'm not going to show you that for all the signs, but here, for example, R, here all the air used in linear Lamite writing, and this is the way we could get the ideal shape of air. Then we tried to give the impression, because as you can see, in some cases the lines, they are short, they are narrow or larger, and we tried to give the same feeling in the font we developed, and specifically in clay, as you can see. So that's why we produced also a font where it's giving the impression of it's getting narrower at the end. Okay? Then we work on the proportion of the sides, and we determine some specific shapes, specific sizes for the sides. For example, A, usually it's shorter than R, and with different sizes for the sides. And so we developed this font where we have a simple bold and a simple regular shape, and also with this font where it is with the narrow and large strokes. And for example, here it is the font developed by Sina I was using for the... And actually we used a lot the Marv-Dash vessel, because as I told you, that's the most beautiful inscription in linear Lamite, so we used it as a bit standard for the ideal shape of the linear Lamite signs. Okay, so I hope, and we would like to register that in the Unicode system, so we are still working on it. Let's see or when we will be able to carry on this project and to finish it. And I would like to finish this morning with the origin of linear Lamite. What I think is the origin of linear Lamite, what is called Proto-Elamite writing, and so we are going to deal with the origin of writing in the world. We are going to move back from the late 3rd, early 2nd millennium BC to the late 4th millennium BC, so 1,000 years before. So, the origin of writing, we have, at the middle of the 4th millennium BC, we have in all this area numerical tablets from Syria to north-central Iranian plateau. Numerical tablets, it means just tablets with numerical information, 10, 15, 116, whatever, just numerical information. Then, from this origin, we are going to see the invention of two different traditions, the Proto-Cuneiform one in southern Mesopotamia, the Proto-Elamite one in Iran. Completely different traditions. As you can see, Proto-Elamite tablets are attested on a much wider area than the Proto-Cuneiform one in southern Mesopotamia. Up to now, we found Proto-Elamite tablets on 8 different sites, and as you can see, Susa is overrepresented. They are something like, they represent 90% of the corpus. Why? Because of the way the French were excavating in Susa at the end of the 19th, beginning of 20th century. Excavations were not super precise, unfortunately, and we are criticizing them a lot now. But sometimes they were working with more than 1,000 workers in Susa. And actually one of the excavators of Susa, Jacques de Morgan, he was calculating how many months he would need in order to completely dig out the site. So, another time. Which explains the number of tablets found in Susa. And most of them, they are in the Louvre, of course, because of the French excavation. And unfortunately, we have almost no archaeological context for these tablets. We have some nice information from Tepeyaya. Here, I will present them, and also from Talimalian. Once again, Talimalian on that. So this is all how they look like, these Proto-Elamite tablets. So one side, the other side, and on the so one tablet, almost complete. Do you recognize this sign? It really looks like Su in linear Elamite. And this one, E. This one, Zu. And look, this one, what could it be? A. It seems that the signs in Proto-Elamite are quite similar to the signs in linear Elamite. I'm telling you that because now there is a big academic fight with another scholar where I'm saying there is continuity in Proto-Elamite and linear Elamite, and he's saying no, there is no continuity. So just I'm seeing that from point of view of the shapes of the signs seems to be quite similar. Another tablet. Okay. So for example, here I already gave you this example, and now I think that for many signs we can make this kind of very famous figure in cuneiform where we see the evolution of the cuneiform signs from 3000 BC until the end of the 1st century BC. But in our case, it's just between the end of the 4th millennium BC and the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. But still, we can see some evolution. And also, it seems that the Iranians or the Attantite people or the Elamite, whatever, it seems that they are super conservative. It means that most of the signs, they did not change between the late 4th and the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. And here, if you look, most of the time, cuneiform signs change quite a lot from the beginning to, for example, 2000 BC. In Iran, it seems that they were super strict about the shape of the signs, super conservative. So we have, I did not say that, Proto-Elamite tablets. They are mainly administrative bookkeeping documents, so they are only dealing with quantity of wheat, barley, slaves, animals. It's not literature. The beginning of writing in Mesopotamia and in Iran, it's just dealing with Francois, 10 sheep, Richard. That's it. No verb, just names, specific quantity, and object, which is going to be numbered. That's it. So, I'm sorry to say that, but the beginning of writing is not poetic. It's just about dealing with the control of things and people. And it was probably a tool used by 0.001% of the population, and very probably all the other persons, they were not aware about the invention of this of writing, and it was a tool of social control. That's it. And of course, if you want to number, to count things, you need to have specific numerical systems. So, this figure is quite complicated, but it's quite important. Here is a numerical tablets. In the numerical tablets, you have the bisexagesimal system, which is used. Here it is, it works like this way. And you are going to find this bisexagesimal system in Proto-Elamite and Proto-Cuneiform. Okay. In the numerical tablets, you have also the sexagesimal system. You are going to find also in Proto-Elamite and Proto-Cuneiform. You have also the specific, sexagesimal and bisexagesimal systems. They are used in order to count discrete artifact, object. What do I mean by discrete artifact? I mean sheep, or men, or slaves. Something that you can count 1, 2, 3, 4. The third numerical system is the capacity system, which you are going to use in order to count liquids or volume of cereals. You are not going to count wheat with the number of seeds. You cannot do that. And the specific volume or weight capacity system attested in the numerical tablets, but also in Proto-Elamite and Proto-Cuneiform. So, Proto-Elamite and Proto-Cuneiform share the three numerical systems which were there from the beginning in the numerical tablets. But from there, they developed their own numerical systems, and especially in Proto-Elamite, you have a specific decimal numerical system. The most ancient attestation of the decimal system is in the Proto-Elamite tablets. Okay? While in the proto-cuneiform tablets, they developed specific numerical systems to record time, to record surface, and to record other things, this one. But so the blue, red, and green, they are common, and then the gray, the decimal one, and the other one, the proto-cuneiform, they are different. So they share 3 different numerical systems, proto-cuneiform and Proto-Elamite, and what a surprise, these are the 3 numerical systems which are already here from the beginning in the numerical tablets. Okay, so how does it work, Proto-Elamite tablets? So let's take an example. Here is a good one because it's complete. And usually, so the picture and the drawing, here, usually it is to be read from the top to the bottom, from the right to the left, like linear Elamite. And if there is an introduction, we understand nothing. Introduction, we understand nothing. And then you have a specific numbers of entries. So 1 entry, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, seventh one. In this case, 7 entries. And these entries, they work with a specific non-numerical notation, an object which is going to be recorded just in the first entry but not in the other one, and then numerical notation. Look, in this case, it is the decimal system which is used, where this sign means 10, this one means 1, and this one means 100. 94, 69, 147, 44, 50, 110, 2, 112, 75. We understand that clearly, no problem with the numerical notation. And what a surprise, if you make the total of these 7 entries, you are going to find on the reverse 591. It works. So this is perfectly clear. It was determined in the 70s by Freiberg, who worked on that, so it's clear since the 70s. Look, the specific object here, which appears only in the first entry, is this one. We think it may correspond to a low-status male worker or male slave. They were probably slaves in Proto-Elamite era. And very interestingly, the slaves are counted with the same numerical system that they were using for animals. And so it means that they were counting slaves and animals with the same numerical system. So it means that they were considering slaves a bit like they were considering animals. Because we have high status human, they are counted actually with the sexagesimal numerical system. So, as you can see, we understand some things. The numerical notation, the object, which is numbered, but this being said, in green, introduction, nothing. And in red, please pay attention in red, because this is the specific part on which I'm working right now. I think there might be some notations of names, anthroponyms. That's just an hypothesis, but this is the one I'm using right now in order to work with this Proto-Elamite tablets. So just a few words about the introduction. I think we may have a clue about the function of this introduction. So here is a map from Tepeyaya, so the site in we are not in Susa anymore, we are in southeastern Iran. And actually in Tepeyaya they excavated this building, late 4th millennium building in the 70s. They were much more precise than in Susa in the beginning of the 20th century. And we know that all these tablets, they were found in room number 1. All these tablets, they were found in room number 5. So we have a specific archaeological context for each of these tablets. And look, in room number 1, we found all these tablets. And among these tablets, some of them, in room number 1, they start with this sign. And in room number 5, some of these tablets, they start with this sign. So we have a specific association of, so they are almost similar, these signs, but look in the middle, slightly different. So the introduction may be related to the name of the scribe, or the name of the office, or the name of the institution producing the document, or receiving the document. That's the best guess we have, and it comes from Tepeyanin, actually. And actually, we call this sign the airy triangle, the triangle chevelu, airy triangle, and we are going to find it in other contexts. It mainly deals with grain management. It's not a big surprise that this sign is the most frequently used sign in Proto-Elamite, and we interpret it as grain, cereal, this one. And some of them maybe with a surface area, and also with, of course, animal herding. They're counting animals. And look, the airy triangle attested in Proto-Elamite tablets. You may find it also on ceilings. So it seems it was a very important sign, and we have a kind of the border between writing and the other iconographic system used at that time was very probably quite blurred and not very well super precise. I'm showing you a few examples of this airy triangle which was found on ceilings, and also some shells. And actually this one, it comes from the biggest Proto-Elamite tablets, and here you can see two ceilings made by cylinder seals, and you can see clearly this specific airy triangle sign. So maybe it was at the beginning a symbolic tribal sign or function sign, we don't know, but still after a while they use it for in the rating system, Proto-Elamite rating system. I don't know what time is it. Okay, let's move. I'm going to we'll give you another example of this after that. So, as I told you, now you know that linear Elamite has been deciphered. Okay, I've been talking about that since this morning. So linear Elamite is deciphered. And we know we have access to this phonetic grid. My hypothesis will be that there is a continuity between linear Elamite and Proto-Elamite, and if there is a continuity between linear Elamite and Proto-Elamite, maybe I could use linear Elamite to decipher Proto-Elamite. It's a bit like in cuneiform, where first we started to decipher cuneiform with the most recent text in the Achaemenid times, and then we moved back to the most ancient ones. So that will be the same scientific approach. And it's a bit like if some of you are aware about the situation in Crete and Greece, it's a bit like the situation between linear B and where we are using the values, of course, deciphered by Michael Ventris, linear B, and linear A, because we were trying to use, because we know that there is a relation between linear B and linear A, but unfortunately, whenever we are applying to linear A the phonetic values determined for linear B, it does not work, unfortunately. I am afraid I may face a similar situation of between linear Elamite and Proto-Elamite, a similar situation where, okay, the signs seems to be similar, but the fact of applying the phonetic value of linear Elamite to Proto-Elamite is not working, but I may have some nice results to show you. So from the known, linear Elamite, to the unknown, Proto-Elamite. So now I'm working mainly on these specific non-numerical sequences in Proto-Elamite that I am interpreting that they are maybe recording anthroponyms, names, and as most of these tablets, they come from Susa, so they are mainly recording anthroponyms of people living in Susa at the end of the 4th millennium BC. So let's take these tablets as an example. So here I'm just interested in these anthroponymical notations. Okay, there are 10 of them. And if now I'm applying very strictly the value I know for these signs in linear Elamite, if I am applying them to this Proto-Elamite sign, this is what I can get. I'm going to show it more clearly on the next slide. For example, please pay attention to sequence 6, 7, and 8. This is not attested in linear Elamite. I have nothing to say. This I know, that's pu, the first sign in Puzur Sushinak. That is u, something pu. This I don't know. This sign is not attested in linear Elamite. This sign, you know it. A, she, e. So it's written from the right to the left. Something a, she, e. And there, I cannot read it. A, ta, a. A, ta. Actually, ata, it means father in Elamite, and we know that it is an element very frequent in onomastics. There is a very, very interesting phenomenon in Proto-Elamite anthroponyms. We have that. CV1, V1. It means that the penultimate sign is a CV sign with a specific vocalic value, and the last sign is very, very frequently a vocalic sign which is going to prolong the value of the syllabic sign before. Yeah, so I think that's a very... and actually, Merigi, he was aware that the most frequently used Proto-Elamite sign for the names were this sign. He did not know yet at that time that they were vocalic. And so there is this very interesting phenomenon where I think there is a kind of vocalic prolongement at the end of these Proto-Elamite anthroponymical sequences. So I don't think it's out of chance, and that's why I would say yes, there is a relation between linear Elamite and Proto-Elamite. So, if I say my hypothesis fully, I think that there are something like 250 to 300 signs used in Proto-Elamite to record the names. And they moved from this pool of 300 distinct signs at the end of the 4th millennium BC to 77 signs in the late 3rd millennium BC. So they sieved many signs, they discarded some signs in order to get this pure rational and logic phonetic grid in the late 3rd millennium BC. Out of these 250, 300 distinct signs. So, of course, I can use linear Elamite for some of these signs, but all the signs which were discarded in the 3rd millennium BC, here I'm facing a difficulty because I cannot read them based on linear Elamite. For example, here I'm showing you all the sound sequences where, so it's to be read from the right to the left, from the left to the right, where at the end it's ending with A. We are going to focus on this one where we have all the sequences from different tablets ending with La A, okay, as you can see. And I could determine the rule of use of sign A in the Proto-Elamite sequences. Very frequently, that's the last, so it's to be read from the right to the left. Usually, very frequently, that's the last sign in the sequence. And very frequently, it is just after sign Ra, sign Ha, sign Ta, sign La, sign Sha. This phenomenon I was telling you about, a specific syllabic sign followed by the vocalic sign prolonging the vocalic value of this syllabic sign. Ta, A, Sha, A, Pa, A, Ra, A. No, actually, I don't have Pa. But anyway. So I think it clearly shows the relation between the linear Elamite phonetic values that I'm applying on Proto-Elamite. And I think here I have a very nice argument to say, yes, there is a continuity between Proto-Elamite and linear Elamite. Because here I am applying on Proto-Elamite sign phonetic value which comes from linear Elamite. For example, the same with U. Very frequently after sign Zu, which is attested in Puzur Sushinak. Very frequently after sign Pu. Very frequently after sign Tu. So there is this very interesting phenomenon okay, I think you got it. So that's why here I think here there is a continuity between Proto-Elamite and linear Elamite. I hope I convinced you about that. Let's move about, well, if there is another thing that I've been saying for the last 10 years is that Proto-Elamite is as old as Proto-Cuneiform, but I'm not going to discuss that. If you, so Proto-Elamite is as old as Proto-Cuneiform. You can read one of my papers online if you're interested in that. And we are going to move about, I wanted to talk about the specific period between Proto-Elamite and Linear-Elamite. Sorry. Well, to say a few words, I think based on chronological data and logical data, I think that in the current state of the knowledge, it's safer to say that Proto-Elamite and Proto-Cuneiform are contemporary, and to say that actually Vincent Shea, the epigraphist of the team in Susa at the beginning of the 20th century, was saying what I'm going to tell you. I believe that what I call Proto-Elamite writing has the same origin that the cuneiform, and before these two styles, these two writing systems, they come from the same point, very far away in the past. This point for me is the numerical tablets, from which they diverge, both of them. And then Proto-Elamite writing was developed independently. And so this is why I'm proposing that Proto-Elamite is not the daughter of Proto-Cuneiform, but the sister. They are sisters. So sorry, I was obliged to move quite quickly because I wanted to talk about the relation between Proto-Elamite and Linear-Elamite. So if you want to read about that, you can read on my academia page this paper, Considerations on the History of Writing on the Iranian Plateau, where actually I'm proposing this new terminology. So as you could see, I hate the word elam. I hate the word elam. I'm trying to erase the word elam from Iranian history because that's, once again, it just has a value if you're interested in the Mesopotamian way of considering space around the Mesopotamian plain. Okay, great. But if you are interested in Iran, absolutely no value. That's why I've been proposing for Proto-Elamite writing. Early Proto-Iranian writing, I've been accused, because I'm using the word Iranian, of promoting Iranian nationalism. So, I don't know what to do with that. Anyway, early Proto-Iranian writing, with this dating, there will be a middle Proto-Iranian writing, still not very well, a phase, still not very well understood. I'm going to talk about that. Late Proto-Iranian writing, what we called before Linear-Elamite writing. So as you can see, I'm not using anymore Elamite. And instead of Elamite language, this is why I'm proposing Attantite language. And you know why now I'm using the old toponym of these people. And I understand the history of writing in Iran according to 6 phases. A phase where they were just using numerical tablets, so actually it's just before writing. Then the Proto-Elamite or early Proto-Iranian tablets. Then this middle Proto-Iranian phase. Then this late Proto-Iranian or Linear-Elamite phase between 2300 and 2000 BC. It still goes on in this phase number 5, but at that time they were still using it, but they started to use Mesopotamian cuneiform also. So in this time, phase number 5, we had the time of digraphy between Linear-Elamite and cuneiform to record the Elamite language, and then after 1850 BC, they dropped Linear-Elamite died, and they were just using cuneiform. So that's the way I would consider the history of Iranian writing between the middle of the 4th millennium BC and the beginning of 2nd millennium BC. So here for the Iranians, if you want to talk about that, Khate Aghaze Ilami, it becomes Khate Aghaze Irani Khadim, Khate Aghaze Irani Emiane, Khate Aghaze Irani Jadid, Zabane Atantiai. Okay, these are my propositions. Okay, so the transition between, so what is going on between 3000 and 2300 BC? with this middle, because the strongest argument against my hypothesis of a continuity between Proto-Elamite and linear Elamite is, what is this gap of several centuries in the between 3000 BC and 2300 BC? What happened? And I recognize that's a quite strong argument. So, here in blue is the area where the Proto-Elamite tablets are attested in the late 4th millennium BC. So, first of all, let's have some archaeological consideration. Around 2900 BC, this area was abandoned. There is no settlement anymore. And Fars, at the beginning of 3rd millennium BC, also it experienced a very specific phenomenon where, for example, Talimayan was not occupied anymore. So, out of the original area where Proto-Elamite tablets are attested, this area, no urban occupation in 3rd millennium BC, and here, in the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, it experienced a urban collapse. So actually, where were the two places where this tradition, scribal tradition, could be continued? Susiana and Kerman. And that's exactly the places where where we are going to find actually the linear Elamite writing. So I think that the middle phase can only be found in this area and in this area. These are the two places where this middle phase can be found. Actually, we have some texts that we can put in the between. That they are neither Proto-Elamite nor linear Elamite, and specifically K. It's linear Elamite with many archaic-like shape. E prime found in Giroft. It comes from layers dated around the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. And I have new data also, the inscription of Shaddad, linear Elamite inscription from Shaddad. The grave has been redated recently, and it says the grave is dated around 2700 BC. So the linear Elamite inscription in the grave is 2700 BC. So right in this middle phase. And there is, I think I did not have the time to change the slide, there is a very nice work of a student in Ghent University, Mirko Sourdi. He studied the archive of the Susian excavators, in Susa, and actually he could prove that some of these clay artifacts from Susa, not related to Pusur-Sushinak, they come from layers earlier than the old Akkadian period, so earlier than 2300 BC. So very probably they are dated back to, for example, M. You remember M, the scholar tablet? They date back to the 25th or 24th centuries BC. And another proof, I think, for the continuity is, I told you, the signs are similar. I'm not going to on this. And the signs, they are similar, and most of them, as I told you, they did not change actually. They were very conservative in the shape of the signs. And if you remember, I told you about the specific vocalic notation at the end of the Proto-Elamite sequences, ata, a, she, e. And I think they were already using these specific signs in the Proto-Elamite tablets with the same phonetic values that they would have in the linear Elamite tablets at the end of the 3rd millennium BC. And there is this very nice sentence coming from a very great scholar, Ignaz Gelb. He wrote a very influential book, A Story of Writing. All syllabic writings are either identical with or simplified from the respective syllabaries of the word syllabic writings from which they are derived. Let me translate these sentences. All syllabic or phonetic writings, like linear Elamite writing, are either identical with or simplified from the phonetic signs which are used in mixed writing system, like Proto-Elamite, and they are derived from them. So it says that most of the phonetic writing, like linear Elamite, they come actually from a mixed writing system like Proto-Elamite. And here I completely agree with that sentence, and that's why I think that yes, linear Elamite is not even derived. That's the recent version of the Iranian writing system in the late 3rd, early 2nd millennium BC. So, thank you for your attention. You were very brave to support me for 3 hours. If you want to find some of the papers I've been using, of course, maybe you don't know this internet site. It's academia.edu. You may download some of my paper. I wrote something in simple English. If you don't want to read the decipherment paper, you may read this one, Breaking the Code, Ancient Events, Linear-Elamite Scribe Decipher. And for the Iranians in the room, if I made a paper in Persian if you want to, because I know that today you heard the conference, so your idea will be quite clear about that, but in 1 week, let's see what will remain. But if you want, you still have some these popular papers for you to keep the main ideas of this presentation. So thank you for your attention. Maybe there will have a few minutes for question, or anyway, we will see each other after the lunch break. Any question? Yeah?
How did you find out that it's written from right to left?
Sorry?
How did you find out that the Elamite writing is from right to left?
What does it mean, Elamite writing?
Times.
Linear-Elamite, Proto-Elamite?
Linear, sorry.
But because how did I find out that it should be? Usually it should be read from the right to the left. Sometimes it's written from the left to the right. So it seems they could read in both directions. But because the signs, I can see it quite clearly, because if you see the signs, for example, in the cuneiform inscription Z, from the right to the left, it makes perfectly sense, and the meaning is clear, and from the left to the right, it means nothing. That's it. Yeah? Yeah.
One of the challenges is that you only have 43 items, you said earlier.
In Linear-Elamite.
Yeah. So how do you go about finding more? I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you go downstairs in the warehouse of the British Museum and look for it? I mean, how accurate are the contents of museums across the globe? I mean, some of them could be in private hands. I mean, how do you find more? I mean,
Fundamentally, how can we find more? With more excavations. Yeah, with more excavations. But I think we can, of course, we can only find more inscriptions, by the way. I've been, now I'm facing another problem, is I've been sent, after the announcement of the decipherment of Linear-Elamite, I've been sent many pictures of inscription, and some of them, they are fake. Okay, I could determine very quickly, okay, they are fake, it means nothing. But now that the key is published in 2022, now I may expect good fakes. If you read seriously the paper, if you know the Elamite language, actually you can produce nice and regular Linear-Elamite inscriptions. And in this case, it will be more difficult for me to distinguish fake from genuine inscriptions. And actually, so I could, all the inscriptions I received before 2022, I'm quite sure about them. But now, if I'm receiving a good inscription, regular, good, and with meaning which is clear in Elamite, no, I must be careful about them, because I published the key. And we know, of course, that in many museums, but I'm pretty sure not in the British Museum, but in many museums, there are probably some cuneiform inscriptions, cuneiform tablets. Maybe they are fakes, because there are some money involved in this, all this matter. But fundamentally, with more excavations.
Why do you call Proto-Iranian instead of Proto-Amtite? So why?
Instead of what?
So Amtite is how you call Elamite, right? So
Yeah.
why instead of being a Proto-Iranian, why don't you?
Yeah, because so why I'm calling the writing system Proto-Iranian writing and the language Atamtite?
Why don't you call it Proto-Atamtite for the Proto-Iranian?
Because I wanted to use, good question, because since the beginning I've been talking about this topic, so Elamite language, Linear-Elamite writing, there are many confusions in mind of people with this Elamite stuff, because the name of the language is almost the same as the name of the writing system. Sometimes I've been Some people told me, Francois Dessets deciphered Elamite language. No, I deciphered linear Elamite writing, which we call Elamite language. That's why I'm trying to distinguish clearly the name of the writing, Proto-Iranian, from the name of the language, Hatamtat. So I'm trying not to mix, to distinguish very clearly the name of the language and the name of the writing.
But you don't know if the Proto-Iranian is the Atamtite language. It could be, you just didn't decipher yet.
Oh, so, good point. And I think that's a situation for the Proto-Elamite or early Proto-Iranian tablets is very probably more complex than this, because the relation to language in the late 4th millennium BC is not the same as in the late 3rd millennium BC. They were not recording complete text. They were just recording stuff like Francois, Richard, 17 sheep. There is no verb, no adverb, no all these things. And as you could see, most of these tablets, they come from Susa. So they probably record people, the names of people of Susa. And we know the names of the people of Susa since the late 3rd millennium BC, at the moment when we have cuneiform writing. And we know that people in Susa, they have Akkadian names, Sumerian names, Elamite names, names based on different languages. So I am expecting to find, if my hypothesis is correct, if they are really their names, maybe I could read Akkadian names of people living in Susa at the end of the 4th millennium BC, recorded with early Proto-Iranian writing. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for the interesting and comprehensive lecture. My question is, at what stage in history do we find the move from just numerical to more literature, poetry, politics?
So you're talking about the semantic field of use of writing. So when they decided to move from just bookkeeping and administrative writing to more stuff, so 3rd millennium BC in Mesopotamia and also in Egypt is very clear. We are talking about the semantic field of application of writing got broader and broader. And for example, the first political information in Mesopotamia, so at the beginning just administrative and lexical list, and then we have some political information around 2700. Then we will have some records of laws and stuff like that in the late 3rd millennium BC. The first letters are around 2300 BC, and I think also in the late 3rd millennium BC, the first record of literary work, like poems or prayers, stuff like that. It does not mean that prayers or literature did not exist before. It just means that they did not feel necessary to write it. And they just got to the idea progressively that writing could be used to record other types of documents. So mainly, to answer you briefly, 3rd millennium BC. Both 3rd millennium, between 3000 and 2000 BC. Both in Mesopotamia and in Egypt.
Yes, with regard to Per Child's assessment, it's obviously worth pointing out that the two cultures which write with pictographic signs at the same time are not very far away, which is a crucial matter. And one interesting thing that you showed is that with the Proto-Iranian round 1 were 4 signs which you call hairy triangle, in a rather inflammatory fashion, with different items inside.
Yeah.
So you have a box with a semantic indicator inside. Now this is a very, very Sumerian practice, very Mesopotamian practice. Do you have other examples of a box?
Yeah, we call them composed signs, and but be careful when you say very Mesopotamian, very Sumerian, not being anachronistic, because at that time we are exactly at the same time than in Mesopotamia, and
now I'm just talking about the graphic principle.
Why is it
a larger sign?
Yeah, which is going to receive another something.
Yes, which in Mesopotamia can either be semantic or phonetic.
Yeah, it's very probably the same in Iran.
Yeah, well, that's a rather interesting matter.
Yeah. And so, just to be clear about this idea of who was the first rating system in the world.
I wasn't asking you.
Yeah, but
I wasn't asking you. And also, there are no Egyptologists here, so you have to be very. That's not really the point. It's a matter of graphic principle.
Yeah, so they are using
diagnostic.
So they are producing composed signs. But this being said, if you look at the way proto-cuneiform tablets they are recorded, they are not recorded according to lines, but according to boxes. And as you can see, the Proto-Elamite tablets, they are strict lines like that, which is completely different from proto-cuneiform. And also another big difference between Proto-Elamite and proto-cuneiform. No lexical list in Proto-Elamite. Very interesting, this phenomenon. We have administrative and lexical lists for proto-cuneiform, no lexical list in Proto-Elamite. And if you look at the majority of the signs, you just have a few numerical signs which are common, and I think it's a common heritage from the numerical stage. And from there, both at the same time, you have very strong similarities, numerical signs, coming very probably from the current common heritage, the numerical tablets. And all, except this common core, numerical signs core, all the other signs, they are different. All the other signs are completely different. So I think the most logical explanation for that is the common signs come from a common ancestor from which both proto-cuneiform in Mesopotamia and Proto-Elamite in Iran, they diverge at around 3300 BC. Because otherwise, if we say Proto-Elamite comes from Proto-cuneiform, okay, so why there are not much more common signs then? Which is not the case.
There's a difference between trying to establish that, which I don't think is so important, is to look carefully at what we have. And you don't get swept up in which way it went or which way it went. I don't think it's really relevant. It's quite likely, in my opinion, that the origins of both these things are much, much, much older than either. Much older than either. So it's worth we're all totally at the mercy of archaeological discovery.
Yeah.
You have a few tablets from one room in one building, and you know they're there because somebody read an archive in Paris. It's all it's not concrete in any way.
And I think, because here we are mainly talking about chronological data, and considering, I'm not saying that writing appeared at the same time in this three area, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Iran, at the same time. Very probably we are talking about the invention of writing in only one place, and it was diffused very quickly in 10 or 15 years to another place. But considering, so the idea of writing was diffused very quickly, but considering archaeology and the way we are dating and C14 dating, we will never be able to say that the idea was in Mesopotamia. It was created in 3315, and then it was adopted in Susa in 3295.
Yes, that's
20 years.
we
will never have the precision to say such a thing. So I think it's better to say they are contemporary and they appear more or less at the same time.
Isn't it apparent that writing is different things at different times to different people who are seeking to express or record different ideas or different relationships to the world around them and to one another? So tense, quantity, directionality, these are all reflections of the human mind, and the human mind and culture itself is evolving and changing, and this is only one reflection of that, as Dr. Finkel is saying. So you're quite right, we can't be precise, but because you can't be precise, you have to stick with the concrete record and not extrapolate.
No, but I'm very emphasizing on this point, because right now the main mindset is to say proto-cuneiform is the first writing system in the world, and proto-cuneiform is the mother of Proto-Elamite. That's the main idea. You go and check Wikipedia, that's the mainstream idea. And
debunking that idea is fine.
Yeah.
Supplanting it with another that is equally erroneous will achieve nothing.
But I think based on the current data, based on C14 dating, based on the logical arguments that there are almost no common signs, but just this numerical signs which comes from the previous phase, which are the numerical tablets, I think it's safer to say that they are sisters and not mother and daughter.
Yeah. One other thing, you do yourself an injustice by saying that the writers were conservative. the correct way, in your point of view, is to say that they developed a perfect writing system for their own language. Why would they muck around?
Thank you, Irving. Thanks a lot. I will remind that.
I suppose, hold on, I just remembered, what time is it?
It's one something.
It's 1 something, we've got to be back here at 2 o'clock,
Yes.
theoretically. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, so if anybody wants to not be in the room till 2 o'clock, now's your chance.